I returned to the States after a year of exhausting work abroad, just wanting to hide in my mountain cabin to breathe again. But at the final turn, I saw the gate wide open, something I always keep locked with my own hardware. Then I spotted that familiar SUV parked right in my spot. My sister stood there holding my glass, smiling like she owned the place. She had remodeled my kitchen and spent over $58,000 of my money. My name is Daphne Stewart, and for the last 11 months, I have existed in a state of suspended animation, functioning entirely on caffeine and the sterile, recycled air of Copenhagen office buildings. At 37 years old, I had convinced myself that managing clinical trial operations for Vantage Cure Biomed Systems was the pinnacle of my career. It was prestigious, it was lucrative, and it was slowly hollowing me out from the inside like a termite infestation in a dry log. When the plane wheels finally screeched against the tarmac in North Carolina, the first sensation that hit me wasn't relief. It was a physical heaviness, the kind that settles in your marrow when adrenaline finally decides to pack its bags and leave. I was burned out. That was the polite corporate term for it. In reality, I was a husk. I had spent nearly a year overseeing the logistical nightmares of Phase 3 trials, dealing with regulatory boards that moved at the speed of glaciers and stakeholders who demanded results at the speed of light. I didn't just need a vacation. I needed a resurrection. That was what the cabin was for. I navigated my car up the winding roads toward Banner Elk, the Blue Ridge Mountains rising around me like ancient, slumbering giants. This drive was a ritual. Every curve of the asphalt, every dip where the stomach lurches slightly, was mapped into my muscle memory. The cabin wasn't just a piece of property. It was the only thing my grandfather had managed to protect from the slow erosion of our family's financial stability, and he had left it explicitly to me. He used to call it his sanctuary. I called it my second lung. It was the only place where I could actually breathe. The higher I drove, the more the air changed. It became thinner, crisp, smelling of damp earth and pine needles. I rolled the window down, letting the wind whip my hair across my face. Desperate to scrub away the lingering scent of airport antiseptic, I had fantasized about this moment for 300 days. I wanted silence. I wanted the creak of the front porch steps. I wanted to sit in my old leather armchair, stare at the timberline, and speak to absolutely no one for at least 72 hours. But the universe, or perhaps my family, had other plans. The first sign that my sanctuary had been breached came at the final turn. The gravel driveway to my property is obscured by a dense thicket of rhododendrons, accessible only by a heavy iron gate. I am meticulous about that gate. Before I left for Europe, I had secured it with a heavy-duty padlock, the kind that requires a code and a key. I remembered the metallic click it made when I locked it, a sound of finality that promised safety while I was gone. As I rounded the bend, I slammed on the brakes. The tires crunched loudly on the loose stones, the sound echoing too loudly in the quiet afternoon. The gate was standing wide open. It wasn't just unlatched. It was propped open with a large rock, inviting and careless. My heart hammered against my ribs. A sudden, violent rhythm that had nothing to do with the altitude. I sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. My first instinct was fear. Had someone broken in? Was there a squatter? But as I eased the car forward, the fear curdled into something colder, something heavier. The gravel on the driveway, usually smooth and undisturbed, was churned up. There were fresh tire tracks, deep grooves that suggested heavy use over the last few weeks. Someone hadn't just broken in. Someone had been coming and going. I crested the small hill that revealed the cabin, and the breath I had been holding hissed out through my teeth. Parked right there, in the spot where I always parked. My spot, the spot that offered the best view of the valley while unloading groceries, was a white SUV. It was polished, gleaming under the dappled sunlight, looking utterly out of place against the rustic, weathered wood of the cabin. I knew that car. I knew the license plate. I killed the engine, but I didn't get out immediately. I sat in the sudden silence, the ticking of the cooling engine counting down the seconds of my peace. which was now officially dead. It was Marissa, my younger sister. I grabbed my purse and stepped out. The mountain air was still sweet, but now it tasted complicated. I marched toward the front door, my boots thudding heavily on the wooden stairs leading to the deck. I fished my keys out of my pocket, my fingers fumbling slightly with the brass ring. I was ready to storm in, to demand answers, to ask why the hell my gate was open and why she was here without so much as a text message in 6 months. I didn't get the chance to use my key. Before the metal could even touch the lock, the deadbolt slid back with a clack. The door swung inward. Marissa stood there. She looked infuriatingly comfortable. She was wearing an oversized gray sweatshirt that fell off one shoulder. Her hair pulled up in a messy, intricate bun that probably took 20 minutes to perfect, but was meant to look effortless. She wasn't wearing shoes, just thick wool socks, standing on my threshold as if she were the one welcoming a guest. But what stopped me cold wasn't her presence. It was what she was holding. She had both hands wrapped around a ceramic mug. It was a handmade piece, a lumpy, imperfect thing with a glaze the color of storm clouds. I had bought it at a local art fair 10 years ago. It was my favorite mug, the one I drank my morning coffee from every single day I was here. Seeing it in her hands felt like a violation more intimate than if she had been wearing my clothes. "Surprise," she said. Her voice was light, airy, completely devoid of the tension that was currently strangling me. She tilted her head, giving me a bright, beaming smile. "You are back early. I didn't think you were landing until the weekend." I stared at her, my brain struggling to bridge the gap between the solitude I expected and the reality standing in front of me. "Marissa?" I managed to choke out. "What are you doing here?" She stepped back, sweeping her arm wide to usher me inside. "Don't be like that. Daff, come in. Come in. You look exhausted. You look like you haven't slept since Christmas." I stepped across the threshold, and immediately, the sensory dissonance hit me. The cabin always smelled of wood smoke, old paper, and the dried sage bundles I hung near the hearth. It was a masculine, earthy scent that grounded me. Now, the air was thick with something else, vanilla, a cloying, artificial vanilla scent that coated the back of my throat. I looked around the living room, and the disorientation deepened. The layout was the same, but the texture of the room had been altered. My vintage Persian runner, the one with the frayed edges that I loved, was gone. In its place was a fluffy, cream-colored rug that looked like it belonged in a teenage influencer's bedroom. The coffee table, usually stacked with my field guides and architectural digests, was now arranged with a fan of fashion magazines I had never subscribed to. And the photos? I walked toward the mantel, my boots feeling too loud on the floorboards. The framed black and white photo of Granddad and me fishing at the creek was missing. Instead, there was a sleek silver frame holding a picture of Marissa laughing with a group of people I didn't recognize, raising toast glasses at a beach bar. I don't understand," I said, turning back to look at her. She was sipping from my mug, watching me with a look of mild amusement, as if my confusion was a cute quirk. "Marissa, I didn't give you a key. How long have you been here?" She waved a hand dismissively. "Oh, not long. Just a bit. I needed a place to crash, you know? Things with Kyle got weird, and the lease was up, and I thought, well, Daphne is off saving the world in Europe, and this big beautiful place is just sitting here gathering dust. It seemed like such a waste to leave it empty. Houses need to breathe, right?" "Houses need to be secure," I snapped, the exhaustion finally sharpening into anger. "I locked the gate for a reason. I locked this door for a reason." "How did you get in? Who gave you access?" She took another sip of tea, her eyes sliding away from mine. Details. That is not important right now. What matters is that you are home. And honestly, it is perfect timing." "Perfect timing for what?" I asked. I felt like an intruder in my own home. I was standing in the middle of the living room with my coat still on, clutching my bag like a shield, while she lounged against the doorframe in her socks. "You look tense," she observed. ignoring my question. You need to relax. And I have just the thing to help with that. Seriously, you are going to thank me. I have been dying to show someone, and Mom hasn't driven up yet. Marissa, I said, my voice dropping an octave, trying to regain some semblance of authority. I am not in the mood for show and tell. I want to know why my rug is gone, where Granddad's picture is, and why you are living in my house without asking me. I am not living here, she scoffed, though she didn't move. I am just staying for a bit. We are family. Daphne, since when do we need formal invitations? Besides, she pushed off the doorframe and walked past me, grabbing my elbow lightly as she went. Her touch was breezy, confident. I did you a favor, a huge favor. She began to pull me toward the back of the cabin, toward the kitchen. I didn't ask for favors, I said, pulling my arm back, but following her nonetheless. A knot of dread began to form in my stomach. It was a cold, hard stone of intuition. Marissa, what did you do? You know how you always complained that the cabin felt a little dated? She asked over her shoulder. I never said that, I replied instantly. I said it was rustic. I liked it rustic. Rustic is just a nice word for old, she laughed. And dark. God, it was so dark in here. It was like living in a cave. I just wanted to brighten it up, make it more livable, open concept. You know? It is all about the flow. We reached the hallway leading to the kitchen. The floorboards here were original heart pine, stained a deep, rich molasses color by 100 years of footsteps. I loved these floors. I loved the way they creaked. Prepare yourself, Marissa said, her voice dropping to a theatrical whisper. She stopped at the entryway to the kitchen and turned to face me, blocking my view for a split second. Her face was flushed with pride, her eyes sparkling. 3, 2, 1, ta-da! She stepped aside. I stepped forward. The air left my lungs. It didn't leave in a gasp. It simply evaporated, leaving a vacuum in my chest that imploded instantly. I stood there, blinking, trying to force my brain to process the visual data it was receiving. But the image refused to align with my memory. My kitchen was gone. The kitchen I knew was a warm, amber-colored haven. It had knotty pine cabinets that had darkened with age. It had a butcher block island that bore the scars of 1,000 chopped vegetables. It had a cast-iron sink and a backsplash of mismatched ceramic tiles that Granddad had installed himself in the 70s. It was imperfect, cozy, and smelled of timber and history. That room no longer existed. In its place was a blindingly white, sterile laboratory. The pine cabinets had been ripped out. In their place were high-gloss, white laminate monstrosities that went all the way to the ceiling, devoid of handles, sleek and featureless. The warm butcher block was gone, replaced by a massive slab of white quartz with gray veining that looked cold enough to perform an autopsy on. The lighting. Oh God. The lighting. The soft, warm yellow bulbs were gone. The ceiling had been cut into to install recessed can lights that flooded the room with a harsh, blue-white LED glare, making the space look like an operating theater or a showroom in a mid-range furniture store. I know, right? Marissa's voice floated toward me, seemingly from a great distance. It feels so much bigger. We knocked out the upper cabinets on the east wall to put in the floating shelves. Very trendy right now. And the subway tile? It is hand-glazed. Well, sort of. It looks hand-glazed. I couldn't move. My eyes traced the room, looking for one familiar thing, one anchor to the reality I had left behind. There was nothing. The vintage stove was gone, replaced by a stainless steel beast that looked too digital, too complex. The floor. She had covered the original heart pine. She had covered the 100-year-old wood with gray, luxury vinyl planks that mimicked the look of barnwood, but felt entirely soulless. Marissa, I whispered. The sound was barely audible. She was walking around the island now, running her hand along the quartz countertop lovingly. It took forever to get the contractors up here. You know how mountain people are. So slow. But I pushed them. I told them my sister was coming home and she deserved a space that reflected her status. A modern woman needs a modern kitchen, right? She picked up a glass bowl of lemons that had been artfully placed on the counter. Staged. I realized the whole thing was staged. It looked like a page torn out of a catalog, completely devoid of personality, devoid of life, devoid of me. "Where are the old cabinets?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Where is the sink? The one Granddad installed?" "Oh, that junk?" She wrinkled her nose. "The contractor hauled it away. It was full of dry rot anyway. Daphne, you really should thank me. I saved you from a potential mold issue." She leaned against the counter, crossing her ankles, looking at me with an expectant smile, waiting for praise, waiting for me to tell her how wonderful she was. "It opens up the whole house," she continued, filling the silence I couldn't seem to break. "I mean, the light just bounces now. Before, it just got absorbed into all that dark wood. Now it is fresh. It is a fresh start." I looked at her. I looked at the stranger standing in the middle of a stranger's kitchen, wearing my sister's face. The exhaustion that had been weighing me down on the drive up vanished, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. This wasn't a favor. This wasn't a remodel. This was an erasure. She hadn't just changed the room. She had surgically removed the heart of the house. And as I looked at the high-end appliances, the custom backsplash, the quartz that must have cost a fortune to haul up a mountain road, a question formed in my mind, a practical, terrifying question that cut through the emotional shock. I looked at Marissa, really looked at her. She had been working part-time as a yoga instructor last I heard. She lived paycheck to paycheck. She borrowed money for gas. "Marissa," I said, my voice steady now, vibrating with a frequency that could shatter glass. "Yeah?" she beamed. "This is—" I gestured helplessly at the white expanse. "This is expensive. This is incredibly expensive." "Quality costs," she chirped, quoting some marketing brochure she must have read. "But it adds value to the property. You have to think about resale value." "I am not selling the cabin," I said through gritted teeth. "I am asking you a question. The quartz, the cabinets, the labor, the appliances. This is tens of thousands of dollars." She shrugged, picking at a loose thread on her sleeve. "Well, yeah. I mean, you get what you pay for." I took a step toward her. The white lights hummed overhead, a low electric buzz that drilled into my skull. "Where did the money come from, Marissa?" She stopped picking at her sleeve. She looked up at me, and for a second, just a split second, the bubbly facade slipped. Her eyes went flat, unbothered, terrifyingly calm. "Relax, Daphne," she said. "I handled it." "Handled it how?" She set my mug down on the quartz counter with a sharp clink. "I used the cards," she said, the world tilted on its axis. "What cards?" "Yours," she said, as if she were telling me she had borrowed a cup of sugar. "The ones in the desk drawer. I mean, the points alone are going to be amazing, right? I figured since you were making so much money over there in Europe, you wouldn't want me to skimp on materials." She smiled again, but this time, it didn't reach her eyes. "It is an investment, Daphne. Don't be so dramatic." The silence that followed Marissa's declaration was absolute. It was not the peaceful silence of the mountains I had craved for the last year. It was a suffocating, pressurized silence, the kind that happens inside a submarine right before the hull breaches. I looked at the woman standing in front of me, my baby sister, the person I had taught to tie her shoes, the person who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. She was leaning against a slab of quartz that cost more than her car, sipping tea from my mug, looking at me with a defiance that was terrified and terrifying all at once. 58,000, I repeated. My voice sounded foreign to my own ears, flat and devoid of inflection. "You put $58,000 on my cards. 58,400. Actually," she corrected me, as if precision would somehow make the felony palatable. She set the mug down and walked over to a massive chrome machine sitting in the corner where my toaster used to be. It looked like a spaceship designed to make cappuccinos. But look at this, Daphne. It is Italian, dual boiler. It grinds the beans to the exact micron. You love coffee. I did this for you. She ran her hand along the chrome flank of the machine. And the drawers, she continued, pulling one open. It slid out silently. Soft close, try it, just push it. I did not move. My hands were clenched into fists at my sides, my fingernails digging into my palms hard enough to leave crescents. Marissa, I said. I did not authorize this. We are family, she said, her tone shifting into that wheedling, defensive register she had perfected in high school. Since when do we need authorization forms? You are the one with the big corporate job. You are the one flying around Europe on per diems that are higher than my rent. You have the money, Daphne. I just have the time. I was helping you increase your equity. This cabin? It was rotting. I brought it into the 21st century. I did the labor. I managed the contractors. That is work. You know, I should probably charge you a project management fee. But I won't, because I am your sister. Her logic was a labyrinth with no exit. In her mind, my bank account was a communal resource, a reservoir that she was entitled to tap into because she felt she deserved a certain quality of life that she refused to earn. This is not about equity, I said. This is theft. Don't use that word, she snapped, her face darkening. It is ugly, and it is not true. I use the cards in the desk, the ones with your name on them. Sure, but the bills go to the family address. Mom usually sorts them. I figured you would just pay it off like you always do. What is $50,000 to you? A bonus check? A rounding error? I felt a cold flush of nausea. 5 months. That was the timeline. For the last 5 months, I had been buried under the agonizing pressure of the Copenhagen trials. I had been working 16-hour days, sleeping in 4-hour bursts, and existing in a fog of jet lag and stress. I remembered seeing emails from the bank. I remembered seeing subject lines about unusual activity or high balances. I had swiped them away. I had told myself I would deal with it on the weekend, then the weekend would vanish in a crisis meeting, and I would tell myself I would deal with it next month. My negligence had built this kitchen. My exhaustion had signed the checks. Where are the statements? I asked. What? The paper statements, I said, stepping toward her. The bank sends paper statements to the P.O. box in town. If you have been using the cards, you have been seeing the bills. Marissa shrugged, turning her back to me to fiddle with the settings on the coffee machine. I don't know. Around. Maybe in the office? I spun on my heel and marched out of the kitchen. The vinyl floor planking felt slick and cheap under my boots, a poor imitation of the solid wood she had covered up. I crossed the living room, ignoring the new, beige, sectional sofa that occupied the space where my worn leather Chesterfield used to be, and threw open the door to the small room I used as an office. It was a disaster. Usually, my desk was an altar of organization. Now, it was a dumping ground. There were empty takeout containers, half-drunk water bottles, and piles of fashion magazines. I yanked open the top drawer. My checkbook was gone, my passport, which I usually kept in a small fireproof box in the back, was sitting loose on top of a stack of sticky notes. I grabbed the stack of mail that had been shoved into the corner. It was junk mail, catalogs, flyers for pizza. There were no bank statements. There were no credit card bills. I started pulling open other drawers, the panic rising in my throat like bile. Where is the mail? Marissa? I yelled. She appeared in the doorway, leaning against the frame, looking bored. I tossed most of it. It was just junk. You know how much paper they waste. I am talking about the financial documents, I said, slamming the drawer shut. The ones that show you stealing nearly $60,000 from me. Stop saying stealing, she shouted back, her voice cracking. I improved the asset. And stop acting like I'm some stranger. I am your sister. I have been living here for months, taking care of the place while you abandoned it. I froze. I turned slowly to face her. What did you say? I said you abandoned it, she said, lifting her chin. You have been gone for a year. The pipes could have burst. Bears could have broken in. I have been here. I have been the one maintaining the property. I have been the one dealing with the snowplow guy. I live here. Daphne. You do not live here, I said, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. You are a guest who broke in. Actually, she said, and a smug, practiced look crossed her face. It was a look I recognized. It was the look she wore when she thought she had found a loophole. I am not a guest. I have been here for 6 months. I get mail here. I have utilities in my name. Well, the internet. Anyway, that makes me a tenant. In North Carolina. If someone stays for more than 30 days and receives mail, they have rights. You can't just kick me out. I have tenant rights. The room seemed to tilt. She hadn't just remodeled a kitchen. She had researched the law. She had planned this. This wasn't a whimsical decision to crash at her sister's cabin. This was a hostile takeover. You have got to be kidding me, I said. I am serious, she said, crossing her arms. I looked it up. If you try to change the locks or throw my stuff out, that is an illegal eviction. I could sue you. I stared at her, trying to find the little sister who used to cry when her goldfish died. She was gone. In her place was a stranger with cold eyes and a sense of entitlement that was so vast it sucked the air out of the room. You are threatening to sue me? I asked, after spending $60,000 of my money. I am protecting myself, she said. I knew you would be like this. Mom said you would be like this. She said you would care more about the money than about family. Mom knows? Of course Mom knows, Marissa scoffed. Who do you think helped me pick out the quartz? She thinks the kitchen looks beautiful. She said it is about time you shared your success. The betrayal hit me harder than the financial loss. My mother. My mother had stood in this kitchen, my kitchen, and helped my sister spend my money. Knowing I was thousands of miles away working myself into an early grave, they had discussed it. They had rationalized it. They had decided, together, that I was just a bank account with a pulse. I looked around the office. I saw the empty space on the wall where my diploma used to hang. It was gone. In its place was a macrame wall hanging. Get out, I said. What? Get out, I repeated. Right now, pack a bag, get in your car, and get off my property. Marissa laughed. It was a nervous, high-pitched sound. I just told you, you can't make me leave. I have rights. I don't care what you think you have, I said, walking toward her. She shrank back slightly, surprised by the physical advance. I am giving you 10 minutes. No, she said. Her face crumpled, the smugness dissolving into immediate, weaponized victimhood. Tears welled up in her eyes instantly. You can't do this. I have nowhere to go. My apartment in Charlotte is gone. Kyle kicked me out. I don't have any money. Because you spent it all on a kitchen I didn't want, I yelled. The volume of my voice made her jump. I did it for us, she screamed back, so we could have a nice place for Christmas, so Mom would want to come visit. You are so selfish. Daphne, you always have been. You hoard everything. You hoard this house. You hoard your money. And now you want to throw your own sister out into the cold? Do you want me to be homeless? Is that it? You want me sleeping in my car? I want you to take responsibility, I said. I am taking responsibility, she sobbed. I am taking care of the house. Why can't you just say thank you? Why does everything have to be a fight with you? I pushed past her, needing to get out of the small room before I screamed again. I walked back into the living room, my eyes scanning the space with new, paranoid clarity. It wasn't just the sofa. The curtains were new, heavy, velvet things that blocked out the mountain view I loved. There was a new sound system bar under the television. I walked to the sliding glass door and looked out onto the deck. There was a hot tub. A brand new, 6-person hot tub was bubbling away on the deck, steam rising into the cool mountain air. Beside it was a set of patio furniture that looked like it belonged in a Miami resort. White wicker, plush cushions, completely impractical for a climate that got heavy snow and rain. "Is that a hot tub?" I asked, not turning around. "It helps with my anxiety," Marissa said, her voice thick with tears, following me into the room. "I have been having panic attacks. The doctor said hydrotherapy helps. Did you use my card for that too?" "It was on sale," she sniffed. 40% off. It was practically free." I turned around. She was standing there, wiping her eyes with the sleeve of her oversized sweatshirt, looking small and pathetic, but I wasn't seeing her anymore. I was seeing the predator underneath, the predator that used tears as camouflage. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. I didn't look at it. I just held it tight. "I am going into town," I said. "Good," she said, perking up slightly, thinking she had won, thinking the storm had passed. "Go get some food. We can cook dinner. I can show you how the induction cooktop works. It boils water in like 60 seconds. You will love it." I walked to the front door. I put my hand on the doorknob. The metal was cold. "I am not going to get food. Marissa," she stopped. "What? Where are you going?" I opened the door. The fresh air rushed in, cleansing the scent of vanilla and betrayal. I looked back at her one last time. She was standing on the fluffy cream rug, framed by the white kitchen, surrounded by the trophies of her theft. "You keep talking about tenant rights," I said. My voice was steady. I was done screaming. I was done crying. "But tenants have leases. Tenants pay rent. Tenants don't forge signatures and steal credit cards." "Daphne, stop," she said, taking a step forward, the fear finally reaching her eyes for real. "Don't be dramatic. Come back inside." "You are not a tenant, Marissa," I said. "You are an intruder. You are a trespasser, and you have used my money to commit fraud." "Daphne!" she screamed as I stepped out onto the porch. "If you leave, don't bother coming back. You are abandoning family." "No," I said, closing the door between us. "I am going to get the police." I walked down the stairs, my heart pounding a rhythm of pure adrenaline. I got into my car. I didn't look back at the window where I knew she was watching. I reversed out of the spot she had claimed, the tires spinning on the gravel she had churned up. I drove down the mountain, leaving my sanctuary behind. But it wasn't a sanctuary anymore. It was a crime scene. And I was done being the victim. I was going to find a lawyer. I drove straight to Boone with a singular focus that burned the tears right out of my eyes. The drive down the mountain usually relaxed me, but today the winding roads felt like a racetrack. I was not operating on sadness anymore. I was operating on adrenaline and a cold, hard realization that my sister was not just a nuisance. She was a liability. I pulled into the lot of a brick building near the courthouse that housed the High Country Law Group. I did not have an appointment, but the receptionist must have seen the look on my face because she squeezed me in with Mallory Keene. Mallory was nothing like the country lawyers I expected. She was sharp, angular, and wasted absolutely zero time on pleasantries. Her office was sterile, smelling of old paper and lemon polish. She listened to my story without blinking, taking notes on a yellow legal pad with a fountain pen that scratched aggressively against the paper. When I finished describing the kitchen, the credit cards, and Marissa's claim of tenant rights, Mallory set the pen down. "Okay," she said. Her voice was dry and crisp. "Let us strip away the family dynamic for a second. If a stranger did this, what would you call it?" "Burglary?" I guessed. "Breaking and entering," Mallory corrected. "Trespassing, unauthorized use of a credit device, identity theft, and regarding the house, she is attempting to establish tenancy through adverse possession or squatter's rights, though she is misinterpreting the law in North Carolina. Guests do not become tenants just because they receive a piece of junk mail." She leaned forward, clasping her hands. "Here is the reality. Ms. Stewart, the police will try to tell you this is a civil matter. They hate domestic financial disputes. They will say since she had access to the home. The theft is muddy. Your job is to make it crystal clear. You need to stop thinking of her as your sister and start thinking of her as a defendant." "She said she has rights," I said, the doubt still nagging at me. "She said I cannot kick her out. She has the audacity of someone who Googled real estate law for 10 minutes, Mallory scoffed. "But she is right about one thing. If we physically drag her out, she can sue for wrongful eviction. So we do it by the book. We file an immediate summary ejectment. We file a police report for the fraud. And we cut off the money supply." Mallory tore the top sheet off her legal pad and handed it to me. "Do not argue with her," she instructed. "Do not engage in emotional debates about childhood trauma or why she deserves a new kitchen. Argue with evidence, paper trails, timestamps. That is how we win this." I left her office feeling lighter, armed with a strategy. My next stop was the bank. I walked into the local branch where I had banked since I was 18. The air conditioning was freezing. I sat across from a woman named Nina Carlisle, a personal banker who looked about my age. I placed my ID and my debit card on the desk. "I need to report extensive fraudulent activity," I said, "and I need to freeze everything, right now." Nina typed into her computer, her expression professional, until she pulled up my credit card statements. Her eyebrows shot up. "Okay," she said slowly. "I see a high volume of transactions in the last 90 days. Home Depot, Wayfair, Williams-Sonoma, a local contractor, Blue Ridge Stone and Tile." "None of those were me," I said. "I was in Denmark." "There is a charge here for $4,200 at a luxury spa in Asheville," Nina noted, scrolling down. "And another one for $2,000 at an electronics store." My stomach clenched. The hot tub, the sound system. It wasn't just the kitchen. Marissa had been living like a queen. "Mark it all as fraud," I said. "Dispute every single transaction that occurred after I left the country. We will have to cancel these cards and issue new ones," Nina explained. "I can put a rush on it, but Ms. Stewart, given the amount, we are looking at over $50,000 here. The bank's fraud department is going to launch an investigation. They will involve law enforcement, if you know who did this." She trailed off, giving me a sympathetic look. In a small town. People talk. She probably knew who my sister was. "I know who did it," I said, my voice steady. "File the report." Leaving the bank. I felt a strange sense of detachment. I was methodically dismantling my sister's life, or at least the parasitic life she had attached to mine. It felt surgical. The police station was the hardest part. The lobby smelled of stale coffee and industrial cleaner. I waited for 20 minutes before a detective came out to get me. Detective Isaiah Trent was a heavy-set man with tired eyes and a demeanor that suggested he had seen everything and was impressed by none of it. He led me to a small interview room and listened as I laid it out. I showed him the initial printout Nina had given me at the bank. I told him about the kitchen. "It is a lot of money," Trent admitted, looking at the figures. "But here is the thing. You gave her a key?" "No," I said firmly. "She found a spare or she broke in. I did not give her a key." "But she is family," Trent said, leaning back in his chair. "Defense attorneys love that. They will argue implied consent. They will argue she was caretaking the property and you authorized the renovations verbally. It becomes a he said, she said situation." "I was in Europe," I insisted. "I have emails proving I was working. I have passport stamps. Why would I authorize a $60,000 kitchen remodel while I was out of the country?" Trent sighed. "Look, I will take the report. We will open a file. But I'm going to warn you right now. These family cases, they get messy. Usually, the victim files a report, gets the family member arrested, and then 2 weeks later, mom or dad calls crying, begging to drop the charges. The DA hates that. It wastes our time." He looked me dead in the eye. "If you go down this road, you have to stay on it. There is no turning back once I put handcuffs on her. Are you sure you want to do this to your sister?" I thought about the white kitchen. I thought about the smug look on Marissa's face when she told me she used my cards. I thought about the sheer entitlement of stealing my life and calling it a favor. I am sure, I said. She is not my sister right now. She is a criminal. Trent nodded slowly. All right then. We will send a unit up to take a statement from her. See if she admits to anything. But do not expect an arrest tonight. We need to build the case. I walked out of the station into the late afternoon sun. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by a deep, bone-aching exhaustion. I just wanted to go home. But I didn't have a home right now. I had a crime scene. As I walked to my car, my phone buzzed. It was a notification from my cloud storage service. Storage almost full. I froze. My hand gripped the phone, the cameras. I had installed a security system 3 years ago, a doorbell camera, and 2 floodlight cameras covering the driveway and the back deck. I had completely forgotten about them in the chaos of the last few hours. Marissa had obviously disconnected the router when she moved in, which was why I hadn't received live alerts, but the system had a backup battery and a cellular failover for uploading clips. If she hadn't physically ripped the cameras down immediately, there would be footage. I opened the app. It took a moment to load, the little circle spinning, and there it was, a timeline. I scrolled back. The most recent clips were blank. She must have unplugged the base station eventually, but scrolling back to 6 months ago, I saw it. I saw her SUV pull up to the gate. I saw her get out. Not with a key, but with a pair of bolt cutters. She snapped my lock. I had her on video breaking in. A fierce, cold triumph surged through me. This wasn't implied consent. This wasn't caretaking. This was a break-in. I drove back up the mountain with a renewed sense of purpose. I had the evidence Mallory wanted. I had the proof Trent needed. When I reached the cabin, the sun was dipping behind the ridge, casting long, bruised shadows across the yard. The white SUV was gone. The silence was profound. It wasn't the peaceful silence I remembered. It was the silence of abandonment. I walked up the steps, wary, half expecting her to jump out from behind a bush. The front door was unlocked. I pushed it open and stepped inside. "Marissa?" I called out. Silence. I walked into the kitchen. It was still the blinding white operating room, but it felt different, empty. The massive Italian espresso machine was gone. I blinked, looking at the empty spot on the counter where the chrome beast had sat just hours ago. I turned to the living room. The new beige sectional sofa was still there, too heavy to move alone. But the decorative pillows were gone. The fluffy cream rug was gone, leaving the bare subfloor exposed where she had ripped up my Persian runner. I ran to the sliding glass door. The patio furniture was gone. She had looted the place. I ran to the office. This was my biggest fear. I yanked the drawers open, empty. She hadn't just taken the things she bought with my money. She had taken my files, my birth certificate, my social security card, the deed to the house which I kept in the bottom drawer. She had cleaned me out. I stood in the middle of the office, trembling. This was not just a tantrum. This was a tactical strike. She knew I would go to the authorities. She was removing her leverage and my identity. I walked back into the kitchen, feeling like a ghost in my own house. On the white quartz island, there was a single piece of paper, a note. I picked it up. It was written in purple marker. Marissa's handwriting. Loopy and childish. I hope you are happy. I tried to do something nice for you. I tried to make this place a home for us. But you are just like Dad was. Cold. Selfish. You care more about your stupid money than you do about people. I took my things. Do not try to contact me. You have made it very clear that I'm not welcome. There was no apology, no acknowledgement of the $58,000. Just a twisting of reality where she was the martyr and I was the villain. She truly believed it. That was the scariest part. She didn't see herself as a thief. She saw herself as a victim of my ingratitude. I crumpled the note in my fist. My phone chimed in my pocket. A text message. I pulled it out. It was from a number I didn't recognize. Hope you are proud. Mom knows what you did. I stared at the screen. The sun had fully set now, and the cabin was dark. illuminated only by the harsh blue glow of the LED street lamp down the road filtering through the window. I was alone. My house was gutted. My identity was compromised, and the war had just officially begun. I didn't reply. I didn't cry. I walked over to the wall switch and turned on the blindingly bright kitchen lights, flooding the empty, sterile room with artificial brilliance. "Okay," I said aloud to the empty room. "If you want to fight, Marissa, you are going to get one." I pulled up the app on my phone again and hit the download button on the video of her cutting the lock. I watched the progress bar inch forward. 1%, 2%. I wasn't going to sleep tonight. I had a timeline to build. The blue light of the monitor was the only thing illuminating the empty living room. It was 3 a.m, and I had not slept. My eyes felt like they were packed with sand, but I could not look away from the screen. I was scrubbing through the timeline of my life, or at least, the version of it that had happened while I was 5,000 miles away. I had reconnected the base station to a secure hotspot on my phone. Bypassing the router Marissa had unplugged, the system began to sync, pulling archived footage from the remote server down to my laptop. It was a digital excavation. I was digging for the moment the infection started. I found it. The timestamp read January 30th, 2025, 2:45 in the afternoon. I had left for the airport on the 27th. On the screen, my sister's white SUV pulled up to the gate. I watched, breath held, expecting to see her struggle or hesitate. She did not. In the previous footage, I had seen the aftermath, the cut lock. But here, the angle was different. She stepped out of the car, bald as brass, and used a pair of heavy-duty bolt cutters to snap the shank of my padlock. She tossed it into the bushes with a casual flick of her wrist, like she was tossing an apple core. But it was what happened next that made my blood run cold. She drove up to the cabin, parked, and walked up the front steps. She didn't break a window. She didn't kick the door. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a key, a gold key. I paused the video and zoomed in. It wasn't the spare I kept hidden in the fake rock. That was still there. It looked like a fresh copy. I stared at the pixels, my mind racing. I had never given her a key. Mom had a key. For emergencies only. Granddad had given me the deed. But Mom still felt a sense of maternal ownership over the property. Had she given it to Marissa? The betrayal felt physical, a sharp twist in my gut. I resumed the playback. The following weeks were a montage of violation. I watched a parade of trucks, delivery vans from high-end furniture stores, a contractor's pickup with Blue Ridge stone and tile stenciled on the side. I saw Marissa standing on the porch, holding a clipboard, pointing and directing workmen. She looked authoritative. She looked like the lady of the manor. There was no hesitation in her body language, no fear of being caught. She was playing house with a confidence that was terrifying. Then I switched to the interior camera. I had a small, inconspicuous camera on the bookshelf in the office, mostly to keep an eye on my expensive monitors. Marissa evidently hadn't noticed it. Or she hadn't cared enough to look. The footage from February 12th was the smoking gun. Marissa walked into the office. She was wearing my bathrobe, my favorite plush gray robe. She sat at my desk and opened the center drawer. It wasn't a frantic ransacking. It was surgical. She pulled out my portfolio of credit cards. I watched, mesmerized by the horror of it. As she took her phone out, she laid the cards out on the desk, one by one. She took a picture of the front. She flipped them over. She took a picture of the back. She did this for every single card. Then she opened the file cabinet. She pulled out my personal banking folders. She flipped through them, found my passport, and photographed the data page. She found my social security card and photographed that too. I hit stop. I had to close my eyes for a moment. This wasn't an impulsive decision to remodel a kitchen. This was identity theft, premeditated and executed with chilling efficiency. She wasn't just using the cards. She was archiving the data so she could use them later, online, away from the physical plastic. I exported the clips, my fingers trembling on the trackpad. I drafted an email to Mallory Keene. The subject line simply, evidence. I attached the files. Within 10 minutes, despite the ungodly hour, my phone pinged. Mallory was awake, Do not just save these on your laptop, she wrote. I want 3 backups, one on an external hard drive, one on a separate cloud service, and one printed timeline. Write down every date, every time, and exactly what is happening in the frame. We need to overwhelm the district attorney with specifics. I followed her instructions. I spent the next 2 hours logging timestamps. March 4th, 10 a.m. Contractor removes original cabinetry. March 15th, 2 p.m. Marissa signs for a $3,000 sofa delivery. Then I found the anomaly. It was a file that hadn't come from the house cameras. It was in a folder labeled Uploads on the cloud account. I realized with a start that Marissa must have synced her phone to the cabin's Wi-Fi before she unplugged the router, and her automatic backup had dumped a few files into the family shared storage before the connection was cut. I clicked on a video file dated late April. The camera was shaky, clearly held by a hand or propped up on a dashboard. The location wasn't the cabin. I recognized the yellow lines of the pavement and the cart return corrals. It was the parking lot of the big supermarket down in Boone. The video showed Marissa standing outside her SUV. She was talking to a man I didn't recognize. He was older, wearing a cheap suit that fit poorly. He looked like a strip mall accountant or a disbarred lawyer. Marissa handed him a thick manila envelope. The man opened it, checked the contents, and nodded. Then, he handed her back a different stack of papers. They were blue-back documents, the kind used for legal filings. I zoomed in as much as I could. The resolution was grainy, but as the man handed the papers over, the sunlight hit the bottom corner. I saw the distinct, crimped seal of a notary public. Why was my sister meeting a man in a supermarket parking lot to exchange notarized documents? And why did she look so nervous? In the video, she kept glancing around, checking over her shoulder. This wasn't a remodel. This was something else. This was legal. I saved that clip to a separate folder labeled Suspicious. I needed air. The digital evidence was making me claustrophobic. I stood up and walked to the front door, unlocking it to check the mailbox at the end of the driveway. I hadn't checked it since I arrived. Too distracted by the kitchen, the morning mist was still clinging to the trees as I walked down the gravel drive. The metal mailbox was cold to the touch. I opened it. It was empty. Not just no bills, no junk mail, no flyers, no current resident coupons. That was impossible. Even if she had thrown everything away yesterday, the mail ran today. I pulled out my phone and logged into the USPS Informed Delivery Service, a tool I used to track packages while I was traveling. I scrolled back through the history. For the last 4 months, the images of my daily mail had stopped generating. Instead, there was a system notification. Forwarding order active. I clicked the details. My breath hitched. A change of address form had been filed in March. My mail, my bank statements, my tax documents, my letters, wasn't being delivered here. It was being rerouted to a P.O. box in Charlotte. Marissa hadn't just intercepted the mail. She had legally redirected it. She had impersonated me to the federal government to ensure I never saw a bill. I walked back to the house, the silence of the woods feeling heavy and oppressive. I wasn't safe here. She had keys. She had my mail. She had my identity. I spent the next 4 hours turning the cabin into a fortress. I called a locksmith I found on Google who promised 24-hour emergency service. He arrived at 8 in the morning. A burly guy who didn't ask questions when I told him to change every single cylinder in the house. I want high security, I told him. The kind you can't pick. That will cost you, he said. Do it. I had him install deadbolts on the interior doors, too. The office and my bedroom. I went to the hardware store in town and bought a small, fireproof safe. I bolted it to the floor of my closet. Inside, I placed the few documents I had left and the hard drive containing the backup footage. I drove back into town to the police station. I needed Detective Trent to see this. Trent looked even more tired than he had the day before. He watched the footage of the credit card photography in silence. He watched the clip of the supermarket meeting twice. This guy, Trent said, pointing to the man in the cheap suit on the screen. I have seen him around. He hangs out near the courthouse. Not a lawyer, a fixer, does notary work, process serving, that kind of thing. Slippery character. Why was she meeting him? I asked. What could she possibly be notarizing? Trent leaned back, rubbing his jaw. Ms. Stewart, you said the kitchen cost $58,000, and the hot tub, and the furniture. We are talking close to 70. Maybe $80,000 total? At least, I said. And she is a yoga instructor? Part-time. Trent looked at me, and his expression shifted from bureaucratic boredom to genuine concern. You need to pull your full credit report, he said quietly. Not just the current activity, I mean the full history. Go back 5, 10 years. Why? Because people don't wake up one morning and decide to steal 80 grand from their sister, he said. That is a graduation, not a beginning. This kind of comfort with fraud, this level of entitlement, it takes practice. I would bet my badge this isn't the first time she has used your name. It is just the first time she got greedy enough to get caught. A chill went down my spine that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. Check everything, Trent warned. Check for loans. Check for utilities in other cities. Check for co-signed leases you don't remember signing. I walked out of the station feeling like the ground was dissolving under my feet. I drove back to the cabin. The new keys felt heavy in my pocket. I locked the gate. I locked the front door. I locked the office door. I sat down at my desk, the black screen of my laptop reflecting my own pale, exhausted face. Trent was right. The kitchen was just the tip of the iceberg. The way she had stood on the porch directing contractors, the way she had photographed the cards, the way she had redirected the mail. This wasn't a crime of passion. It wasn't a mistake. It was an occupation. I opened the credit bureau website. I took a deep breath, my finger hovering over the Generate Report button. I was terrified of what I was about to see. I realized then that the sister I thought I knew, the messy, slightly irresponsible but loving girl I grew up with, had been dead for a long time. In her place was a stranger who had been feeding on me for years. I clicked the button. The loading wheel spun. I was about to learn exactly how much my sister loved me. My phone began to vibrate against the wooden surface of the desk. The sound was a harsh, angry buzz that seemed to drill right into the silence of the cabin. The screen lit up with a photo of my mother, Lynn Stewart, taken at a garden party 3 years ago. She looked happy in the picture. She looked like a mother who loved her children equally. I stared at it. The vibration rattled the credit report I had just printed. The paper still warm, filled with lines of data that proved my sister was a parasite. I did not want to answer. I knew exactly what was coming, but the ringing was relentless, a digital demand for attention that I had been conditioned since birth to obey. I picked up the phone. Hello, Mom? How could you? There was no greeting, no question about my flight, no concern about my burnout, no asking how I was settling back in after a year abroad. Her voice was a high, thin wire of accusation. How could I what? I asked, though I knew the answer. The police, Daphne, she hissed. Marissa called me in hysterics. She said a detective showed up at her friend's apartment asking questions. She said you are trying to have her arrested. Have you lost your mind? She stole $58,000 from me. Mom, I said. My voice was calm, which I knew would infuriate her. She broke into my house. She gutted my kitchen. She stole my identity. She did not steal anything, Lynn shouted. She borrowed it. She was fixing up the place for you. She wanted it to be a surprise. It was a surprise, I said. A very expensive, illegal surprise. She made a mistake, my mother pleaded, shifting gears instantly from anger to martyrdom. She got carried away. You know how Marissa is. She gets excited. She has vision. She just wanted to help. And now you are treating her like a common criminal? She is your sister, Daphne, your blood. She forged my signature on a quitclaim deed, I said. Did you know about that? Did you know she tried to transfer the title of the cabin? There was a pause on the other end of the line, a heavy, loaded silence. She mentioned she was looking into paperwork. Lynn stammered. to help manage things while you were gone. She was worried about the taxes." "Do not lie for her," I said. "You were here, Mom. You saw the kitchen. You saw the hot tub. You knew I was not paying for that." "I thought you would be proud," she deflected. "I thought you would come home and see how much effort she put in. You have so much, Daphne. You have the big career. You have the travel. Marissa has had a hard time. She just went through a breakup. She needed a project. Why are you being so greedy?" Greedy. The word hit me like a physical slap. I was the one with a gutted house and a destroyed credit score, yet I was the one being called greedy. "I am hanging up now," I said. "If you don't drop those charges, you are tearing this family apart." She screamed, "Daphne, don't you dare!" I ended the call, but the assault was just beginning. My phone pinged, then it pinged again, and again, a rapid-fire staccato of notifications. I opened the family group chat. It was titled Stewart Clan, a digital space that was usually reserved for birthday wishes and photos of ugly holiday sweaters. Now, it was a firing squad. Aunt Carol, Daphne, honey, please rethink this. Police? Really? We handle things in the family. Cousin Josh. Hearing some crazy stuff. You really calling the cops on Rissa over a kitchen remodel? That is cold. Uncle Mike. It is just money. Kiddo, you can make more. You cannot make a new sister. Be the bigger person. I watched the messages roll in. A tide of unsolicited opinions from people who had never read a contract in their lives, let alone a police report. They did not ask if I was okay. They did not ask about the identity theft. To them, the narrative was simple. I was the rich, heartless sister punishing the poor. Well-meaning screw-up. Marissa had gotten to them first. She had spun the story before I even knew the story was being written. I set the phone down, feeling a wave of nausea. I felt isolated. I felt like I was standing in the middle of a crowded room screaming for help, and everyone was telling me to keep it down. Then I saw the notification from a social media app. It was a tag. I clicked it. It opened a video on Marissa's profile. She had posted it 2 hours ago. The caption read, "Finally finished my dream project. So sad to leave my sanctuary, but on to new adventures. I put my heart and soul, and savings, into this place. Hope the next owner loves it as much as I do. Cabin life renovation, my happy place." I played the video. It was a montage set to an acoustic, sentimental pop song. There was Marissa, painting a wall. Marissa, posing with the contractor. Marissa, sitting in the hot tub, my hot tub, holding a glass of wine, looking out at the mountains with a wistful expression. The comments section was full of adoration. "You are so talented. Stunning transformation. You deserve this, girl." She hadn't just stolen the money. She was stealing the credit. She was publicly claiming ownership of the work, framing her departure not as an eviction, but as a choice, and the line about the next owner implied she had sold it or given it up, erasing my existence entirely. She was gaslighting the internet. I was about to throw the phone across the room when it rang again. I looked at the screen. Great Aunt Margot. I hesitated. Margot was my grandfather's sister. She was 82 years old, smoked unfiltered cigarettes despite having emphysema, and had a reputation for being as warm as a blizzard. But she was the only one who had never treated me like an ATM. I answered, "Daphne." Her voice was like grinding gravel. "Is it true?" "Is what true, Aunt Margot?" "That you are nailing that little thief to the wall." I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. "I filed a police report. Mom says I am ruining the family." "Your mother," Margot scoffed, the sound sharp and dismissive, "has the backbone of a chocolate eclair. She has been enabling that girl since she was in diapers. Listen to me, Daphne. Do not let them eat you alive." "They are all against me," I said, my voice cracking for the first time. "They are acting like I am the villain." "That is because you are disrupting the ecosystem," Margot said. "They rely on you to be the steady one, the quiet one who pays the bills and cleans up the messes. If you stop playing your part, They have to look at themselves. And they hate that. She paused, and I heard the click of a lighter. There is something you need to know, she said. Something your grandfather told me before he passed. He knew this would happen. He knew Marissa would steal my kitchen? He knew Marissa would feel entitled to whatever you had. Margot corrected. He loved her, but he saw her clearly. That is why the inheritance was structured the way it was. Did you ever read the trust documents? The fine print? I read the will, I said. He left the cabin to me. He left it to you with a protective clause, Margot said. He called it the insolvency shield. He was terrified Marissa would guilt you into signing the deed over, or that your mother would pressure you into using the property as collateral for one of Marissa's disasters. The clause states that if any family member attempts to claim financial interest or residency without a written lease, the asset enters a protected trust status managed by his old firm. It locks the title. It makes it legally impossible for her to claim adverse possession. My grip on the phone tightened. I didn't know that. He didn't want you to know unless you needed it, Margot said. He wanted you to trust your sister, but he prepared for the day you couldn't. Call the firm in Charlotte. Ask for the Stewart file. Use it. Daphne, crush them with paper. Thank you, Aunt Margot, I whispered. Don't thank me, she snapped. Just win. I am tired of watching fools prosper. She hung up. I sat there, stunned. Granddad had seen this coming from the grave. He had handed me a weapon I didn't even know I was carrying. I was still processing this when headlights swept across the front window. A car was coming up the driveway. Panic flared. Was it Marissa? Had she come back? I grabbed the heavy flashlight I had kept by the desk and walked to the window. It wasn't an SUV. It was a sleek black rental sedan. A woman stepped out, dressed in a sharp blazer and jeans, carrying a laptop bag like a briefcase. Rowan Pierce had been my roommate freshman year of college. We had bonded over shared hatred of 8 a.m. classes and cheap wine. Now she was a crisis management consultant for a tech firm in Seattle. I had texted her yesterday, a garbled mess of help and disaster. I opened the door. She didn't hug me. She didn't say, I am so sorry. She walked in, looked at the white kitchen, looked at the missing rug, and then looked at me. Okay, she said. This is worse than you described. The lighting is aggressive. Rowan, I said, feeling the tears prick my eyes again. Nope, she said, holding up a hand. We are not doing the crying thing yet. We are doing the doing thing. Crying is for after we get your money back. Where's the coffee? Marissa stole the machine. Of course she did, Rowan said, dropping her bag on the quartz island. All right, I brought instant and a bottle of vodka. Pick your poison. She opened her laptop and cracked her knuckles. Sit down, she commanded. We are making a list. For the next 3 hours, Rowan turned my emotional wreckage into a tactical operation. She didn't just listen, she organized. Phase 1. Containment, she said, typing furiously. We need to lock down every digital access point, passwords, security questions, two-factor authentication. I am setting you up with a hardware key so even if she guesses your mother's maiden name, she can't get in. Phase 2. Inventory, she continued. We need a spreadsheet, item, description, estimated value, photo evidence if you have it. We are going to itemize every spoon she took. Phase 3. Witnesses, she said, looking up. The contractor, the plumber, the delivery guys. We need statements. We need to know exactly what she told them. Did she say she was you? Did she say she was the owner? That is the difference between theft and fraud. She signed contracts, I said, remembering the footage. Good, Rowan said, her eyes gleaming. Paper trails are her coffin. We are going to find every signature. Having Rowan there was like having an anchor in a storm. She validated my reality not with sympathy, but with action. She made me feel like this was a problem to be solved, not a tragedy to be endured. Around 9 o'clock. My phone buzzed again. It was a text from Lynn. I have spoken to your father's side of the family. Everyone agrees you are being unreasonable. If you let the police arrest your sister, do not expect to come home for Thanksgiving or Christmas. You are choosing money over people. Daphne, you are on your own. I stared at the words. It was the ultimate leverage, the threat of exile. For years, that threat would have made me fold. It would have made me apologize. It would have made me write a check to keep the peace. But I looked at the white kitchen. I looked at Rowan, typing away, fighting for me when my own blood wouldn't. I thought about Granddad, predicting this exact moment. I wasn't choosing money over people. I was choosing truth over lies. I typed back, I am not the one having her arrested. Mom, the evidence is, and if protecting a criminal is more important to you than your daughter's safety, then I guess I will make my own plans for the holidays. I hit send. My hand didn't shake. It was the first time in my life I had drawn a line that I refused to erase. 10 minutes later, a notification popped up from WhatsApp. It was a voice note from Marissa. I played it on speaker. Daphne, her voice was thick, choked with sobs. Please, please stop this. I am scared. The police called me again. They want me to come in for an interview. I can't go to jail. I can't. I am sorry about the money. I will pay you back. I promise. Just tell them it was a misunderstanding. Please, I am your little sister. Rowan looked at me. One eyebrow raised. She sounds terrified. Wait for it, I said. A second voice note arrived immediately after the first. I pressed play. The voice was different now. The tears were gone. It was cold, hard, and vicious. You think you are so perfect, Marissa spat. You think you can just ruin my life because you are jealous that I actually have taste? If you don't drop this, Daphne, I am going to talk. I am going to tell everyone about what really happened with Dad's estate. I will tell them about the offshore accounts. I will tell them everything. You want a war? I will give you a war. And I will make sure everyone knows the real reason you ran away to Europe. The message ended. Rowan looked at the phone, then at me. What is she talking about? Rowan asked. What offshore accounts? There are no offshore accounts, I said, feeling a cold knot of fury tighten in my chest. She is making it up. She is going to lie about me to distract from what she did. She is blackmailing you, Rowan said. She just recorded herself blackmailing you. Yes, I said. She did. I saved the voice note. I uploaded it to the evidence folder. She thinks she can scare me into silence, I said. But she just handed me the final nail. I looked out the window at the dark woods. The fear was gone. In its place was something sharper, clearer. Let her tell her story, I said. I have the receipts. The glow of the laptop screen seemed to burn my retinas. Rowan and I sat side by side at my desk. The silence of the cabin broken only by the rhythmic clicking of her mouse and the occasional sharp intake of breath. We were no longer looking at the recent damage. We were looking at the history. Detective Trent had told me to pull everything. So I did. I paid the fees and downloaded the full, unredacted credit histories from all three major bureaus: Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. I expected to see the $58,000 for the kitchen. I expected to see the hot tub. I was prepared for those blows. I was not prepared for the rest. Daphne, Rowan said, her voice unusually soft. Look at this entry from 3 years ago. I leaned in. It was a credit card issued by a bank I had never used. The account was opened in November of 2022. I was in Chicago then, I said, my mind racing back. That was the year I got the promotion. I was working 80-hour weeks. The billing address is your mother's house, Rowan noted, pointing to the line on the screen. Limit is $15,000. Balance is $14,980. She maxed it out, I whispered. Keep scrolling, Rowan said. We scrolled down the digital parchment of my financial life, and it was like watching a slow-motion car crash. There was a personal loan taken out 2 years ago for $25,000. The stated purpose was debt consolidation. I had zero debt. There was a store credit card for a high-end electronics retailer, $5,000, charged off as bad debt last year. There were inquiries, hard inquiries that ding your credit score, from car dealerships, furniture stores, and even a cosmetic surgery clinic in Charlotte. I felt a wave of nausea rise in my throat. Hot and acidic, I had to push my chair back and stand up. I walked to the window, staring out at the darkness. For years, I had prided myself on being the responsible one, the one who had it together. I paid my bills on time. I saved. I invested. And all that time, while I was building my life, my sister was quietly, methodically tunneling underneath it. "Add it up," I said to the window. "Daphne, add it up. Rowan, I want the number." I heard the tapping of the calculator keys on her phone. It went on for too long. If we include the kitchen renovation, the hot tub, the stolen furniture, the old credit cards, the personal loan, and the interest and late fees that have accumulated, Rowan paused. We are looking at roughly $172,000. $172,000. That wasn't a mistake. That wasn't borrowing. That was a house. That was a retirement fund. That was a life. "She's been doing this for years," I said, turning back to the room. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from a rage so cold it felt like ice in my veins. Every time she asked me for money for rent and I said no, she just took it anyway. She just opened a new card. "She knew your social security number," Rowan said grimly. "She probably memorized it when you were kids, or Mom gave it to her." I called Detective Trent. It was late, but he had given me his direct line. He picked up on the second ring. "Stuart, I figured you would be calling. It is not just the cabin," I said. "It is everything. She has been using my identity for 3 years. The total is over $170,000. Trent let out a long, heavy sigh. "I am sorry to hear that, but I am not surprised." "How did I not know?" I asked, the shame burning me. "How did I not see this?" "Because that is how it works," Trent said. "We call it the erosion pattern. They start small, a tank of gas, a grocery bill. They test the waters to see if you notice. If you don't, they take a little more, then a little more. They rely on the fact that you trust them. They rely on the fact that you are busy. It is financial incest, Ms. Stewart. They groom you to be the victim." "She ruined my credit," I said. "There are charge-offs, collections." "We will add it to the file," Trent said. "This moves it from a simple larceny case to grand larceny and aggravated identity theft. We are talking about mandatory prison time if the DA pushes it. But Daphne, you need to be ready. If she has been doing this for years, and your mother has been receiving the mail at her house, there is a good chance your mother knew." I hung up the phone. I didn't want to think about that. I couldn't think about that. If I pulled that thread, the whole tapestry of my family would unravel, and I wasn't ready to be an orphan. The next morning brought a new kind of horror. I had just finished installing the new motion sensors on the windows when I heard the crunch of gravel. It wasn't the police. It was a mail carrier, a different one than usual. Driving a private vehicle, likely a substitute, he handed me a bundle of mail. "You are Daphne Stewart?" "Yes." This was in the box. Looked important. Certified. I took the envelope. It was from the Watauga County Register of Deeds. My heart hammered against my ribs. I tore it open right there in the driveway. It was a form letter. Notice of recorded instrument. This letter is to inform you that a document has been recorded in our office regarding the property located at... It didn't say what the document was. It just said, "Quitclaim deed." I ran inside and threw the paper on the desk in front of Rowan. "What does this mean?" Rowan looked at it, and her face went pale. "Call Mallory, now." I dialed my lawyer. Mallory picked up immediately. "Mallory, I got a letter from the Register of Deeds. It says a quitclaim deed was recorded." "Hold on," Mallory said. I heard the rapid clacking of a keyboard. "I am logging into the county portal. Give me a second." The seconds stretched into hours. I watched a dust mote float in a beam of sunlight. Okay, Mallory said. Her voice was different, harder. I am looking at it. It was recorded 2 weeks ago, April 14th. What does it say? It purports to transfer the title of the property, Mallory said. Grantor, Daphne Stewart, grantee, Marissa Klein, consideration, $1. The room spun. She transferred the house to herself? She tried to, Mallory said. A quitclaim deed transfers whatever interest the grantor has. If this document is valid, legally, she owns the cabin. But I didn't sign it, I shouted. I was in Copenhagen on April 14th. I am looking at the signature, Mallory said. It looks like your signature, Daphne. It is a decent forgery, and it is notarized. The man in the parking lot, I whispered. What? The video, I said, my mind snapping the pieces together. The video I sent you. The guy in the cheap suit. She handed him an envelope. He handed her back blue-backed papers. That was the deed. She paid him to notarize a forged signature. That is a Class H felony for her, Mallory said, and a Class I for him if we can prove he knew you weren't there. Daphne, listen to me. This changes everything. This isn't just theft anymore. She tried to steal the real estate itself. She wasn't just planning to live there. She was planning to take it. Can we stop it? We can file a lis pendens immediately, Mallory said. That puts a legal red flag on the title, so she can't sell it or take out a mortgage against it. And we need to get that notary's name. If we break him, we break her. I hung up, feeling like I had been punched in the gut. Marissa hadn't just remodeled a kitchen. She had tried to erase my ownership completely. She wanted to steal my inheritance. The audacity of it was breathtaking. She stood in my house, drank my coffee, and smiled at me, knowing she had a piece of paper in her pocket that said she owned the roof over my head. Rowan, I said, turning to her. She forged the deed. Rowan didn't answer immediately. She was staring at her laptop screen, her mouth slightly open. Daphne, she said, come here. I walked over. I was thinking, Rowan said, her eyes not leaving the screen. If she went to the trouble of remodeling the place, and she tried to steal the title, why? Marissa is lazy. She doesn't like work. Maintaining a property like this is work. Why did she want it so bad? Because it is a free house. No, Rowan said. Because it is a business. She turned the laptop toward me. It was a listing on a popular vacation rental site. The title of the listing was Modern Luxury Mountain Escape, Designer Kitchen Hot Tub. The host's name was Rissa. I scrolled through the photos. They were professional quality. There was the white kitchen. There was the hot tub. There was the beige sofa. Look at the calendar, Rowan said. I looked. The months of March, April, and May were almost fully booked. She has been renting it out, I said, my voice trembling. $150 a night on weeknights. Rowan read. $250 on weekends, plus a cleaning fee. We did the math. In the 3 months she had the listing active, she had likely pulled in close to $12,000. She used my money to renovate it, I said, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. She used my credit cards to buy the furniture and the hot tub to make it a luxury listing, and then she pocketed the rental income. She was running a hotel, Rowan said. With zero overhead, you paid for the capital improvements, you paid the property taxes. She just collected the cash. It was a perfect parasitic business model. And look at the reviews, Rowan pointed out. I read one from a user named Sarah from Florida. Rissa was the best host. She met us at the gate and showed us around. She even left us a bottle of wine. The kitchen is to die for. We will definitely be back. She met them at the gate. She played the role of the gracious owner. She welcomed strangers into my grandfather's sanctuary, took their money, and laughed all the way to the bank. This, I said, pointing at the screen, this is why she needed the deed. If she wanted to turn this into a legit business, or maybe sell it to an investor as a turnkey rental property, She needed the title. She was going to sell it, Rowan said. That is the endgame. She steals the title, maybe waits a few months, and then flips it. In this market, this place is worth $500,000 easily. I sat down on the floor. My legs wouldn't hold me anymore. This wasn't just my screw-up little sister making bad choices. This was a sophisticated, multi-stage criminal operation. Stage 1. Identity theft to fund the renovation. Stage 2. Physical occupation and remodeling to increase value. Stage 3. Short-term rental to generate immediate cash flow. Stage 4. Title theft to secure the asset. Stage 5. Liquidation. She had planned to sell my grandfather's legacy and walk away with $500,000, leaving me with the debt and a stolen house. Who taught her this? I asked. Marissa can't balance a checkbook. She doesn't know what a quitclaim deed is. She doesn't know how to set up a rental listing with dynamic pricing. The boyfriend? Rowan suggested. Kyle? No, I said. Kyle is a bartender. He is nice, but he is not a mastermind. I thought about the man in the parking lot, the fixer. She has help, I said. She has a mentor. I stood up. The shock was fading, replaced by a cold, crystalline clarity. I wasn't dealing with a family dispute. I was dealing with a conspiracy. Print the listing, I told Rowan. Print the reviews. Print the calendar showing the income. We need to calculate exactly how much she profited from my property. I walked back to the kitchen. The white, sterile kitchen that was never meant for me, but for paying customers. I looked at the quartz counter. If she had dared to forge house papers, if she had dared to sell my home out from under me, then she was capable of anything. She had crossed a line that didn't just separate right from wrong, it separated family from strangers. She was a stranger now, and I was going to treat her like one. I pulled out my phone and texted Detective Trent. I have more. She forged a deed. She is renting the house online. And Trent? She is not working alone. I hit send. The war had just expanded. And I was done playing defense. The morning sun hit the sleek, sterile surface of the quartz island, but for the first time in 48 hours. The glare did not make me feel helpless. It made me feel focused. I was done reacting. I was done being the victim in a story my sister was writing. It was time to take the pen back, and I was going to use a very heavy, very expensive fountain pen belonging to Mallory Keene. We were sitting in Mallory's conference room at 9 o'clock sharp. The air smelled of ambition and old law books. Mallory slid a stack of documents across the mahogany table toward me. This is the ex parte domestic violence protective order, Mallory said. Her voice clipped and professional. We are filing for immediate relief, given the break-in, the theft of the firearm, the theft of the identity which gives her access to everything, and the threatening nature of that voice note she sent. We have grounds. A judge will sign this by lunch. What does it do exactly? I asked, picking up the heavy paper. It draws a line in the sand, Mallory explained. Once served, Marissa cannot come within 500 feet of you. She cannot come within 500 feet of the cabin. She cannot contact you electronically, physically, or through third parties. If she texts you, she goes to jail. If she drives past your driveway, she goes to jail. It stops the harassment cold. And the rental listing? Rowan asked from the corner, where she was already typing away on her laptop. That is step 2, Mallory said, pulling up a second document. This is a formal cease and desist and a demand for preservation of evidence directed at the rental platform. We are informing them that the property listed is the subject of active criminal litigation and title fraud. They will pull the listing down within the hour to avoid liability. I want the data before they pull it, I said. I need to know exactly how many people stayed there and how much money she made. Way ahead of you, Rowan said. I have already scraped the site. I have screenshots of every review, every calendar booking, and the pricing history. I calculated she grossed roughly $12,400 in 3 months. That is money that belongs to you. Daphne. It is known as unjust enrichment. We will attach that to the civil suit, Mallory nodded. But right now, the priority is the criminal side. We need to solidify the fraud charges. I spent the next 3 hours doing something that made my stomach turn but was absolutely necessary. I called the contractors. I started with Blue Ridge Stone and Tile. A man named Mr. Henderson answered. He sounded cheerful until I explained who I was. Ms. Stewart? He asked, sounding confused. But I met you. We spent 3 hours picking out that quartz. You wanted the Calicotta gold. No, Mr. Henderson, I said, my voice steady. You met my sister, Marissa. I was in Europe. I did not authorize that work. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could hear the rustling of papers. But I have a contract right here, he said, his voice dropping. Signed by Daphne Stewart. It is notarized. I need you to look at that notary seal, I said. Is it a man named Arthur Higgins? Another pause. Yeah, that is the name. Commission expires in 2028. Mr. Henderson, I am going to need you to send a copy of that contract to my lawyer, I said. That signature is a forgery, and that notary is part of a fraud investigation. Jesus, he breathed. Lady, the bill was $18,000. She paid the deposit with a credit card. My credit card, I corrected him. Which has been reported as stolen. I went down the list. The plumber, the electrician, the company that installed the hot tub. The story was the same every time. Marissa had played the part of the wealthy, eccentric owner perfectly. She had signed my name. She had used my cards. And in several cases, she had produced notarized authorization forms whenever a contractor got suspicious about the name on the card not matching the face. She hadn't just dabbled in fraud. She had built a fortress out of it. By 2 p.m, Detective Trent was back at the cabin. He looked different today. The weary cynicism was gone, replaced by the sharp, hunting look of a predator who had caught a scent. Rowan handed him the new file. We called it the War Binder. It was 3 inches thick, color-coded, and organized with the ruthless efficiency that only a crisis manager could achieve. We have 4 notarized contracts with forged signatures, Rowan said. Flipping the tabs. We have the quitclaim deed, also forged, also notarized by the same individual. We have the rental listing history showing she was profiting from the stolen property. And we have the credit report showing a 3-year history of identity theft totaling over $170,000. Trent whistled low and long. He picked up the binder, feeling the weight of it. This is not a domestic dispute anymore, Trent said, looking me in the eye. This is a criminal enterprise. We are looking at multiple counts of felony forgery, uttering a forged instrument, obtaining property by false pretenses, and identity theft. And because she used the mail to redirect your statements, that brings in mail fraud. The feds might even want a piece of this. What about the notary? I asked. Arthur Higgins. I know Arthur, Trent said grimly. He is a bottom feeder. If he notarized these documents without you present, he loses his commission. If he knew you were not you, he goes to prison. I am going to pay Arthur a visit this afternoon. Men like him do not hold up well under pressure. He will flip on your sister to save his own skin in about 5 minutes. Do it, I said. After Trent left, the cabin felt quiet again, but it was a productive silence. I walked into the kitchen. I stood there, looking at the white cabinets that represented so much betrayal. I hated them. I hated the coldness. I hated that every time I touched the counter, I felt Marissa's smug satisfaction. But I was also practical. I had lost a fortune. I couldn't afford to rip it all out and start over. I called a local carpenter, a man named Eli who had done work for my grandfather years ago. He arrived in a battered truck, smelling of sawdust and tobacco. It is a mess, Daphne, he said, looking around. I mean, it is expensive, but it ain't right for this house. It has no soul. I can't afford a full demo, I told him. I need a retrofit. Can we keep the boxes? They are brand new. Eli ran his hand over the glossy white laminate. Yeah, the boxes are solid plywood, good quality. We can strip these white doors off. I can build you new fronts. Knotty alder, maybe? Stain it a warm honey color to match the floors you want to uncover. We can wrap that island in reclaimed barnwood to hide the modern look. Keep the quartz top. It is good stone, even if it is a bit fancy. We will dress it down. How much? I asked. For just the facings and the wrap? Maybe 6,000. A lot less than a new kitchen. Do it, I said. I want the white gone. I want my house back. It felt like a victory. I wasn't destroying the value. I was reclaiming the aesthetic. I was taking what she had stolen and molding it back into something that resembled me. As Eli left, my phone began to buzz. It was Lynn. I looked at the screen. I felt the old reflex, the conditioning to answer, to explain, to apologize. But then I looked at the war binder sitting on the desk. I picked up the phone. Daphne! Lynn's voice was shrill. The police were just at your sister's friend's house. They were asking about a deed. What have you done? I am only working with my lawyer, I said. My voice was flat, robotic. Stop saying that, Lynn screamed. Talk to me. I am your mother. Marissa is terrified. She says you are trying to frame her. She says she never signed any deed. She says you signed it before you left and you just forgot because you were so stressed. I am only working with my lawyer, I repeated. Daphne Ann Stewart, do not give me that corporate speak. You are destroying this family over a misunderstanding. If you don't call the detective and tell him to stop harassing your sister right now, I am only working with my lawyer, I said again. Is that all you can say? She shrieked. Yes, I said. Please direct all questions to Mallory Keene at High Country Law Group. I hung up. I blocked the number. It was the hardest thing I had ever done. My hands were trembling, but as I set the phone down, I realized the trembling wasn't fear. It was the release of tension. I had unplugged the machine. I had cut the wire that allowed her to send her anxiety directly into my bloodstream. Good job, Rowan said from the sofa. She didn't look up from her laptop, but she raised a glass of wine and a silent toast. That is how you starve a narcissist. You give them nothing. She said Marissa claims I signed the deed, I said, sitting down. That I forgot. Gaslighting, Rowan said. Classic. She is trying to rewrite history, but ink doesn't lie, and timestamps don't forget. My phone rang again. It wasn't Lynn. It was a number I didn't recognize, but the area code was local. Hello? Daphne? It is Margot. Aunt Margot, I said, sitting up straighter. I made some calls, she said, her voice sounding like gravel crunching under tires. I have a friend who works in the back office of the Register of Deeds. Been there 30 years. She pulled the physical file for that quitclaim deed. It is sloppy, Daphne, Margot said with a dark chuckle. Your sister is not as smart as she thinks she is. The signature on the deed? It is trembling. It looks like someone traced it. But here is the kicker. The notary stamp? It is smudged. My friend looked up the logbook reference number. It doesn't exist. Arthur Higgins didn't just notarize a fake signature. He failed to log the transaction in his official journal because he knew it was illegal. That deed is void on its face. Thank you, Margot, I said. Thank you. Don't get soft on me, Margot snapped. Just make sure she doesn't get away with it. Your grandfather built that cabin with his own hands. He didn't build it for a thief. I hung up and relayed the information to Rowan, who immediately added it to the binder under a new tab labeled The Smoking Gun. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across the room. The cabin felt different tonight. It didn't feel like a violation anymore. It felt like a command center. We had the protective order. We had the evidence. We had the witnesses. We had the timeline. We were ready. At 7:30, my phone rang. It was Detective Trent. The room went silent. Rowan stopped typing. I put it on speaker. Ms. Stewart, Trent said. His voice was heavy, serious, stripped of the family dispute hesitation he had shown yesterday. I am here. Detective. I just finished interviewing Arthur Higgins, Trent said. He didn't last long. He gave us everything. He confirmed that Marissa Klein paid him $500 cash to notarize a quitclaim deed and 3 contractor agreements in the parking lot of the Food Lion. He confirmed you were not present. He confirmed he knew it was fraud. I let out a breath, my head bowing forward. He also gave us the location of where she is staying. Trent continued. She is not at her friend's house anymore. She is at a motel in Boone, trying to lay low. What happens now? I asked. I just got off the phone with the district attorney, Trent said. Given the dollar amount, we verified the $170,000 figure with the credit bureaus and the attempt to steal real property. The DA has authorized the charges. There was a pause. The air in the cabin seemed to thicken, charged with the electricity of a storm finally breaking. We are charging her with 4 counts of identity theft, 1 count of uttering a forged instrument, 1 count of obtaining property by false pretenses, and 1 count of felony larceny. Trent said, and Arthur is being charged as an accessory. I looked at Rowan. She nodded slowly. We are preparing the arrest warrant now, Trent said. We are going to pick her up tonight. Tonight? I whispered. Tonight, Trent affirmed. Lock your doors. Ms. Stewart, it is going to get loud before it gets quiet. I hung up the phone. I walked to the sliding glass door and looked out at the dark mountains. Somewhere down there, in the valley, in a cheap motel room. My sister was probably pacing, checking her phone, waiting for me to cave, waiting for Mom to fix it. She didn't know that the fix was coming. It just wasn't the one she wanted. I turned back to Rowan. Open a bottle of wine, I said. I think we need to toast to the truth. They caught her at 3:14 in the morning. Detective Trent called me just as the sun was trying to crest over the Blue Ridge Mountains, painting the sky in bruises of purple and gray. He told me that Marissa had not stayed at the motel in Boone. Sometime after Arthur Higgins rolled on her, she must have gotten spooked. She had run. She drove 3 hours south to Charlotte, back to the apartment of the ex-boyfriend, Kyle, the one she had sworn she was done with. She did not go quietly, Trent told me, his voice rough with lack of sleep. We had to execute a warrant on the boyfriend's place. We found her trying to climb out the bathroom window. I closed my eyes, picturing it. My sister, who used to be afraid of the dark, hanging out of a second-story window in the middle of the night, running from the consequences of her own greed. And Daphne, Trent added, the tone of his voice shifting to something sharper. You need to know what she had on her. She had a bag packed, a high-end designer bag. Let me guess, I said. Bought with my card? Likely, but it is what was inside that matters. We found your original birth certificate, your passport, and 3 credit cards in your name that had not even been activated yet. She was not just running. Daphne, she was taking you with her. A cold shiver went down my spine that had nothing to do with the morning chill. She had my birth certificate. That is the foundational document of a life. With that, and my social security number, she could have become me in any state in the country. She could have started over, leaving me to rot in the ruins of the credit score she destroyed. The arraignment is at 2:00, Trent said. You do not have to be there. The DA will handle it. I have to be there, I said. I hung up and looked at Rowan. She was already awake. Brewing instant coffee in the silence of the kitchen, I was slowly learning to reclaim. You are going, she stated. It wasn't a question. I need to see it, I said. I need to see that it is real. If I don't go, she will just be a voice on the phone or a name on a legal document. I need to see her in the system. The drive to the county courthouse was a blur. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. The courthouse was a brutalist brick building that smelled of floor wax and stale despair. I walked through the metal detector. Rowan right beside me. Her presence a silent shield. We sat in the back row of the courtroom. It was a depressing parade of humanity. DUIs, petty thefts, domestic disputes, and then the bailiff opened the side door. A line of prisoners shuffled in. They were wearing orange jumpsuits, their wrists shackled to their waists. I stopped breathing. There she was. Marissa looked smaller than I had ever seen her. The jumpsuit swallowed her frame. Her hair, usually blown out and perfect, was pulled back in a severe, greasy ponytail. Her face was scrubbed of makeup, revealing skin that looked gray and sallow under the harsh fluorescent lights. Her eyes were red-rimmed and swollen. She scanned the room, looking for a friendly face, looking for Mom, and then, her eyes locked on mine. The air left the room. I expected shame. I expected her to look away, but she didn't. She stared right at me, and her expression was a terrifying cocktail of emotions. There was pleading in it, a silent beg for me to jump up and stop this. But beneath the pleading, sharp and jagged as broken glass, was hatred, pure, distilled hatred. She looked at me not as her sister, but as the person who had put her in a cage. Docket number 492, the clerk announced. State of North Carolina versus Marissa Cline. She stood up. The chains rattled. The sound was heavy and industrial, completely out of place with the delicate way she usually moved. The assistant district attorney, a young woman with a sharp bob and a sharper suit, stood up. She didn't look at Marissa. She looked at the judge. Your Honor, the defendant is charged with 4 counts of identity theft, 1 count of uttering a forged instrument, 1 count of obtaining property by false pretenses exceeding $100,000, and 1 count of felony larceny. Additionally, there are pending charges regarding real estate fraud. Hearing it read out loud like that was physically painful. Fraud, identity theft, forgery, these were not family words. These were career-ending, life-altering words. The judge, a man with thick glasses and an expression of permanent boredom, looked over his spectacles at Marissa. How do you plead? Marissa straightened her spine. She lifted her chin, a gesture I recognized from 1,000 childhood arguments where she knew she was wrong but refused to back down. Not guilty, she said. Her voice rang out clear and defiant. A ripple of murmurs went through the room. Not guilty, the judge repeated, scribbling on his file. Very well. Your Honor, the ADA cut in. Given the nature of the crimes, specifically the theft of identity documents and the fact that the defendant was apprehended while attempting to flee the jurisdiction with the victim's passport, the state requests bail be set at $100,000 secured. Marissa gasped. It was a loud, wet sound. She turned to her public defender, whispering frantically. The defender shook his head. $100,000, the judge mused. Ms. Cline, do you have the means to post bond? Marissa looked at me again, this time. The hatred was gone, replaced by panic. She looked at me, and I could see her mouthing the word, please. She had spent over $170,000 of my money. She had stayed in luxury hotels, bought designer clothes, remodeled a kitchen, and lived like a queen. And now, standing there in court, she didn't have a dime. She had burned through everything. I don't, Marissa stammered. But my mother, my sister? Your sister is the victim, Ms. Cline. The judge cut her off, his voice dry. I am setting bond at $75,000 secured. Defendant is remanded to custody. The gavel banged. It sounded like a gunshot. No! Marissa cried out as the bailiff grabbed her elbow. Daphne, tell them it is a mistake. Mom! I sat frozen. I watched my sister being led away, the chains clanking with every step. She looked back at me one last time, and the look she gave me was enough to freeze the blood in my veins. It wasn't the look of someone who was sorry. It was the look of someone who was plotting. We walked out into the hallway. My legs felt like jelly. You did good, Rowan said quietly. You held it together. Daphne! I stiffened. I knew that voice. My mother was marching down the hallway toward us. She looked like a wreck. Her eyes were wild. Her coat buttoned wrong. She must have missed the hearing by minutes. Where is she? Lynn demanded, grabbing my arm. Where did they take her? She is back in holding. Mom, I said, pulling my arm away. She couldn't pay bail. Lynn stared at me, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. Then, her face contorted into a mask of pure venom. Are you happy? She hissed. Are you satisfied now? You saw her in chains. Is that what you wanted? To humiliate your own flesh and blood in front of the whole town? She humiliated herself, I said. She stole my identity. Mom, she had my passport in her bag. She was running away with my life. She was scared, Lynn screamed, attracting the attention of a passing deputy. Because you sicked the police on her like she is some kind of animal. She is your sister. You could have written a check. You could have set up a payment plan. But no, you had to be right. You had to be the victim. I am the victim, I said, my voice rising. I am the one with the destroyed credit. I am the one whose house was stolen. It is just money, Lynn shouted, tears streaming down her face. God, you are so cold. You have always been cold. Your father was right about you. You care more about your bank account than you do about people. That hit a nerve. My father had left us when I was 12, mostly because of money fights with Mom. To hear her weaponize him against me was a low blow, even for her. I don't care about the money, I said, leaning in close so she could hear every syllable. I care about the betrayal. I want my sister to stop stealing my life. I want her to stop pretending that what is mine is hers. And I want you to stop helping her do it. If she stays in jail tonight, Lynn said, her voice shaking with rage, I will never forgive you. Do you hear me? Daphne? Never. She is staying in jail, I said. Unless you have $75,000. I knew she didn't. Marissa had drained her too over the years, just in smaller amounts. Come on, Daphne, Rowan said, stepping between us. We are leaving. We walked away. I could hear my mother sobbing in the hallway. A sound that echoed off the marble floors. It hurt. Of course it hurt. But it was a clean pain. Like setting a broken bone. It was better than the dull ache of being used. We drove back to the cabin in silence. The sun was setting again, casting long shadows over the mountains. I felt exhausted, hollowed out, but strangely light. The secret was out. The lie was exposed. When we pulled up to the cabin, I saw something fluttering on the front door. What is that? Rowan asked. I got out and walked up the steps. It was a white envelope, taped securely to the wood at eye level. It must have been there since yesterday. Or maybe Marissa had come by one last time before she fled to Charlotte, risking everything to leave the last word. My name was scrawled on the front in Sharpie. Daphne. I ripped it off the door and tore it open. There was a handwritten letter on lined paper. The handwriting was frantic, the pen pressing hard enough to indent the page. I hope you're proud of yourself. You win. You always win, don't you? You get the good grades. You get the big job. You get the grandfather's house. I get nothing. I get the scraps. I fixed this place up for us. I made it beautiful. And you looked at it and treated it like trash. You treated me like a contractor you could just fire. You think you are so superior because you play by the rules. But you are just lucky. You have always been lucky. I am leaving. But don't think for a second that I am sorry. I took what I deserved. I took what should have been mine if this family was fair. You can have your empty house and your precious money. You will be alone in it. Mom hates what you did. Everyone does. I will never forgive you for this. Never. I read it twice. There was no accountability, no realization of the harm she had done. Just a deep, delusional sense of entitlement. In her mind, she was the hero of this story, and I was the villain who refused to share the loot. She still doesn't get it, I whispered. What else is in there? Rowan asked. There is another piece of paper. I looked into the envelope. There was a folded sheet behind the letter. I pulled it out and unfolded it. It was a photocopy. A grainy, black and white copy of a document. I stared at it, and my blood ran cold. It was a document titled Statement of Intent, dated 3 years ago, It appeared to be written by my grandfather. I, Robert Stewart, being of sound mind, do hereby express my wish that my granddaughter, Marissa Klein, be granted full usage rights to the cabin property for her lifetime, to ensure she always has a home. At the bottom was a signature, Robert Stewart, and below that, a signature that looked like mine, Daphne Stewart. I had never seen this document in my life. Granddad would never have written this. He knew Marissa was unstable. That was why he created the trust. I looked closer at the signatures. They were clumsy. They were cut-and-paste jobs from other documents. I could see the faint shadow lines where a piece of paper had been taped over another before photocopying. She had forged a will, or a codicil. And she had included it in the envelope not as a legal threat. She knew it wouldn't stand up in court now, but as a psychological one. She was telling me that in her reality. She had a piece of paper that said she was right. She was telling me that she truly believed she owned this place, and that I was the usurper. "What is it?" Rowan asked, seeing my face. "It is a fake will," I said, handing it to her. She forged a letter from Granddad giving her the cabin. Rowan looked at it and snorted. "This is a bad Photoshop job. Daphne, this wouldn't fool a first-year law student." "It is not meant to fool a lawyer," I said, looking at the dark woods surrounding us. "It is meant to tell me that she is not done. She actually believes this exists. She believes she has a right to be here." I crumpled the fake document in my hand. "She can believe whatever she wants in her cell," I said. I walked into the cabin and locked the door behind me. I threw the bolt. I set the alarm. Marissa was in jail, but looking at that crumpled paper, I realized that the hardest part of this battle wasn't going to be the legal fight. It was going to be accepting that my sister was gone, the person who wrote that letter, who forged our dead grandfather's signature to justify her greed, was a stranger. And she was a stranger who would never stop coming for me unless I made sure she couldn't. "Put it in the binder," I told Rowan. "We show this to the judge at the bond hearing. It proves she is still actively fabricating evidence." I walked to the kitchen and poured a glass of wine. My hand was steady. The arraignment was over, but the war for the truth was just beginning. The preliminary hearing was a different kind of torture than the arraignment. If the arraignment was the shock of the capture, the preliminary hearing was the slow, methodical peeling back of the skin to reveal the rot underneath. I sat in the front row this time. I wanted Marissa to see me. I wanted her to look at the sister she had robbed and realize that I was not going away. She sat at the defense table, still in that orange jumpsuit, looking thinner than she had a week ago. Her roots were showing, a dark smudge against the expensive blonde highlights she had paid for with my money. The assistant district attorney, Sarah Jenkins, did not waste time with theatrics. She treated the hearing like an architectural demolition. She was there to prove there was probable cause to proceed to a full trial, but she ended up doing much more. She laid out the timeline of a predator. "The state calls Mr. Elias Henderson," Jenkins said. Mr. Henderson, the owner of Blue Ridge Stone and Tile, looked uncomfortable in his Sunday suit. He took the stand and swore to tell the truth. "Mr. Henderson," Jenkins asked, holding up a contract, "can you identify this document?" "Yes, ma'am," he said, his voice thick with a mountain accent. "That is the contract for the kitchen remodel at the Stewart cabin, custom quartz installation. And who signed this contract?" "The lady sitting right there," Henderson said, pointing a calloused finger at Marissa. "Only she told me her name was Daphne Stewart. She said she was the owner. She had a credit card with the name Daphne Stewart on it. She even joked about how hard she worked in Europe to afford the stone." I felt a cold flush on my neck. She hadn't just used the card. She had worn my life like a costume. She had laughed with this man, playing the role of the successful international project manager, while I was actually in Copenhagen sleeping 4 hours a night and eating vending machine sandwiches. Did she seem distressed? Mr. Henderson? Did she seem confused or mentally unstable? "No, ma'am," Henderson said firmly. "She was sharp as a tack. Negotiated me down 5% on the labor. She knew exactly what she was doing." The defense attorney, a harried public defender named Mr. Klein, tried to pivot. He stood up and adjusted his tie, looking weary. "Your Honor," Klein said, "my client has a history of anxiety and impulsive behavior. We are looking at a woman who was under extreme financial duress. She was desperate. She was trying to improve a family home, perhaps in a misguided attempt to seek validation. This is not a criminal mastermind. This is a cry for help." I watched Marissa. She lowered her head, playing the part of the broken bird perfectly. She dabbed at dry eyes. But Jenkins was ready. "Desperation," the prosecutor said, her voice cutting through the room like a scalpel, "might drive someone to shoplift food. It might drive someone to pawn a watch. But desperation does not create a 3-year, systematic plan to assume another person's identity. Desperation does not forge a quitclaim deed. Desperation does not hire a corrupt notary in a parking lot to steal a house. That requires calculation, Your Honor. That requires malice." Then, it was my turn. I walked to the stand. I placed my hand on the Bible. I looked at Marissa. She refused to meet my eyes. "Ms. Stewart," Jenkins asked, "when you walked into your cabin, what was your immediate reaction?" "I was in shock," I said. "It looked like a showroom. It did not look like my home." "And how do you feel about the money?" I paused. The courtroom went silent. I looked at the judge, then back at my sister. "It is not about the money," I said. "I can earn more money. It is about the fact that for 3 years, while I was working to build a future, my sister was mining me. She did not see me as a sibling. She saw me as a resource. She saw me as a vein of ore to be extracted until it ran dry. I wasn't a person to her. I was a credit score. I was a signature. I was prey." Marissa flinched. It was the first honest reaction I had seen from her all day. The judge found probable cause on all charges. The trial date was set, but the victory felt heavy. When I got back to the cabin, the war did not stop. It just moved fronts. Mallory Keene was waiting for me in the living room, her laptop open on the coffee table. She looked grim. "We have a problem with the bank," Mallory said without preamble. "Which one?" I asked, dropping my keys. "I thought we froze everything." "It is the big city bank card," Mallory said. "The one with the $15,000 limit that she maxed out 3 years ago. They are refusing to classify it as identity theft." "Why?" I demanded. "I didn't open it. The signature is forged." "Because of how the account is structured," Mallory explained, turning the screen toward me. "Look at this." Marissa opened the account in her name originally. Then, she added you as an authorized user. Then, she called the bank, impersonating you, and requested that the authorized user be made the primary account holder responsible for the bill. Citing a family consolidation of assets, she mixed the files. Daphne. She created a digital paper trail that makes it look like you agreed to take on her debt. I stared at the screen. It was diabolical. By intertwining our names on the account, she had created a gray area. If I claimed fraud, the bank could point to the fact that my name had been on the account for years. She was trying to make me liable for her spending before she even stole the big amounts. I realized. She was hedging her bets. If she couldn't pay, she set it up so the collectors would come after me. "It gets worse," Rowan said from the kitchen. She was surrounded by stacks of paper, phone records we had subpoenaed as part of the discovery process for the civil suit. "What could possibly be worse?" I asked. Rowan held up a single sheet of paper. It was a call log from my mother's cell phone provider, dated 2 years ago. I was cross-referencing the dates of the authorized user switch with Lynn's phone records, Rowan said. On the day that call was made to the bank, the call where you agreed to take over the debt, there is a 40-minute call between Marissa and Mom immediately beforehand, and then a 3-way call lasting 20 minutes. I felt the blood drain from my face. "You think Mom was on the line?" "I think Mom helped her script it," Rowan said, her voice hard. "Daphne, look at the notes on this old credit file. The bank rep noted that the customer verified her identity by providing her mother's maiden name and the exact amount of the last mortgage payment on the family home. Marissa might know the maiden name, but would she know Mom's exact mortgage payment down to the penny? No, I whispered. She never paid a bill in her life. Mom gave her the answers, Rowan said. Mom helped her pass the security check. Lynn knew Marissa was drowning in debt, and instead of bailing her out herself, she helped Marissa attach the anchor to you. I sat down on the sofa. I didn't cry. I think I had run out of tears days ago. Instead, a cold, metallic calm settled over me. It was the clarity of absolute severance. She knew, I said. She knew I was paying for Marissa's mistakes for years, and she let me think I was just lucky to have a good job. She let me believe I was helping the family by being successful, while she was actively helping Marissa rob me. We can depose her, Mallory said quietly. If we put Lynn under oath, and she lies about this call, that is perjury. If she tells the truth, she admits to conspiracy. Go ahead, I said. Daphne, Mallory warned, if you do that, there is no going back. You are not just suing your sister. You are effectively prosecuting your mother. I looked at the white walls of the cabin. I thought about the insolvency shield my grandfather had built. He had known. He had been the only one who tried to protect me. She made her choice, I said. The court will clarify everything. If she wants to sit in the witness chair and lie for Marissa, she can do it in front of a judge. The next day, a courier arrived with a package from Aunt Margot. It was a heavy yellowed envelope. Inside was a photocopy of a legal pad note, written in my grandfather's distinct, blocky handwriting. It was dated 10 years ago, 2 years before he died. Meeting with estate planner. The header read, regarding Marissa. Do not give direct access to funds. Incident with my wallet in 2014. Incident with the unauthorized check in 2015. She does not understand ownership. She believes what she sees is hers. If Daphne inherits the cabin, the title must be locked. Marissa will try to take it. She has the appetite of a cuckoo bird. She pushes the other eggs out of the nest. I ran my thumb over the ink. The appetite of a cuckoo bird. He had seen it. He had seen the pattern when we were just in our 20s, and he had tried to warn me from the grave. He knew. I showed the note to Rowan. He didn't just leave me the cabin because he liked me better. He left it to me because he knew if he left it to Marissa, it would be gone in a year. And if he left it to Mom would give it to Marissa. This goes into the binder, Rowan said, sliding it into a plastic sleeve. This destroys the defense's argument that this is a sudden mental health crisis. This establishes a decade-long pattern of behavior. That weekend was the annual Stewart family reunion. Usually, it was a mandatory event, a barbecue at Uncle Mike's farm. I did not receive an invitation. Instead, I saw the photos on social media. My mother was there, looking haggard and tragic, holding court with the aunts and cousins. I knew exactly what story she was telling. The story of the cruel, rich daughter who put her sick sister in a cage. But then, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Cousin Josh, the one who had been quiet in the group chat. Hey, Daph, just wanted to say, I heard about the forged deed. Mom told me the details. That is messed up. I am not at the barbecue. Didn't feel right. I hope you are okay. You are doing the right thing. Then another text. From a second cousin I hadn't spoken to in years. We all know how Marissa is. Stay strong. The silence was breaking. They weren't posting publicly. They were too afraid of Lynn's wrath for that. But they knew. The cracks in the family facade were starting to show. I wasn't as alone as Lynn wanted me to believe. 2 weeks later, Sarah Jenkins called me to her office. The trial date was official. It would start in 3 weeks. We were going to trial because Marissa refused to take the plea deal. She was still holding out, still convinced that if she just cried hard enough in front of a jury, they would see her as the victim. We are ready, Jenkins said, looking over the mountain of evidence Rowan and I had compiled. The binder, the footage, the bank records, the grandfather's note, The phone logs implicating your mother. She closed the file and looked at me. Her expression was softer than I had ever seen it. Daphne. I handle a lot of family fraud cases, Jenkins said. Usually, they fall apart. The victim gets guilt-tripped into dropping charges, or the evidence is messy. Cash transactions, verbal agreements. It becomes he said, she said. She tapped the binder. But this? I have never seen a victim bring me a case this tight. You did the work. You documented the crime while you were bleeding. I had to, I said. It was the only way to stop the bleeding. Most people don't have the stomach for it, she said. They would rather lose the money than lose the illusion of a happy family. You are brave, Ms. Stewart. I am not brave, I said, standing up to leave. I am just done paying for a family that doesn't exist. I drove back to the cabin. The leaves were starting to turn. The green of the mountains shifting to gold and crimson. The air was crisp. I walked into the kitchen. The carpenter, Eli, had finished the retrofit. The blinding white cabinets were gone, replaced by warm, honey-colored alder wood. The island was wrapped in reclaimed barn board. It looked like a cabin again. It looked like my cabin. I ran my hand over the wood. It felt rough and real. In 3 weeks, I would sit in a courtroom and watch my sister try to destroy me one last time. I would watch my mother take the stand and likely lie to protect her. I would lose the people I had spent my whole life trying to please. But standing in the quiet of the house my grandfather built, I realized something. I had already won. I had my truth. I had my home. And for the first time in 37 years, my bank account and my life belonged only to me. I poured a cup of coffee from the cheap, plastic machine I had bought to replace the Italian beast. It tasted better than anything Marissa had ever brewed. I was ready for court. The trial lasted 4 days, but inside the courtroom, time seemed to warp. It felt like a single, held breath. The prosecution did not play games. Sarah Jenkins, the assistant district attorney, built the case like a master mason laying bricks. She did not scream. She did not pace. She simply presented the architecture of a lie, one piece at a time. She started with the credit reports, projecting the jagged red lines of my financial history onto a screen for the jury. 12 men and women watched as the numbers climbed. They saw the gas station charges. They saw the luxury spa treatments. They saw the unauthorized user forms where my name had been signed with a shaky hand. Then came the footage. The jury watched in silence as the video from my cloud server played. They saw Marissa cutting the lock. They saw her directing the contractors. They saw her sitting at my desk, photographing my passport. But the most damning moment of the prosecution's case was not the video, it was the mail. Jenkins introduced the change of address form obtained from the post office. She showed the jury the signature on the bottom. It was not even a good forgery. It was hasty, arrogant. This, Jenkins told the jury, holding up the form, is not the act of a house guest. A guest does not reroute your bank statements to a P.O. box 3 counties away. A guest does not intercept tax documents. This is the act of someone erasing the owner to replace them. When the defense presented their case, it was exactly what we expected. They painted Marissa as a tragic figure, a woman suffering from undiagnosed anxiety and familial pressure, who had simply tried to improve a family asset and got carried away. Then, Marissa took the stand. It was a gamble. Most defense attorneys tell their clients to stay quiet, but Marissa insisted. She believed in her own charisma. She believed she could charm the jury the way she had charmed our mother for 30 years. She wore a soft blue cardigan and minimal makeup. She cried within the first 30 seconds. I just wanted to make it nice for her, Marissa sobbed, clutching a tissue. Daphne works so hard. She is always so stressed. I thought if I fixed up the kitchen, she would finally be happy. I thought we could spend Christmas there together. She looked at the jury, her eyes wide and wet. Several jurors looked sympathetic. My stomach twisted. She was good. She was terrifyingly good. Then Jenkins stood up for cross-examination. Ms. Klein, Jenkins said, her voice pleasant. You say you wanted to surprise your sister? Yes, Marissa whispered. And you say you intended to live there only temporarily? Yes, just until I got back on my feet. Then can you explain to the jury, Jenkins said, walking to the evidence table and picking up the blue-backed document, why you felt it necessary to forge a quitclaim deed transferring the ownership of the property to yourself? Marissa froze. The tears stopped instantly. I didn't, she stammered. I mean, that was just paperwork, to help manage the taxes. To manage the taxes, Jenkins repeated. By transferring the title, Ms. Klein, in the state of North Carolina, you do not need to be on the deed to mail a property tax check. You forged this deed. You paid Arthur Higgins $500 to notarize it in a parking lot. We have his testimony. Why did you need the title if you were just a guest? Marissa looked at the jury. The sympathy in their eyes was evaporating. I needed security, Marissa snapped, her voice rising, the facade cracking. Daphne is unstable. She disappears for months. I needed to know I had a roof over my head. So you stole the house to feel safe? Jenkins asked. It wasn't stealing, Marissa shouted. It was family property. It should have been mine anyway. The courtroom went silent. In that one outburst, she had admitted everything. She didn't see it as a crime because she didn't believe I had the right to own anything she wanted. But the real blow, the twist that sucked the air out of the room, came during the rebuttal. My attorney, Mallory, had passed a note to Jenkins earlier that morning. It concerned the fake will Marissa had left in the envelope on my door, the one I found after she was arrested, the one she claimed was from our grandfather. Jenkins held up the crumpled photocopy. Your Honor, Jenkins said, the defense has argued that Ms. Klein acted alone, driven by desperation. However, we have found evidence that suggests a deeper, more systemic pattern of deception involving this specific document. She projected the image of the fake will on the screen. We traced the notary stamp used on this fabricated will, Jenkins said. It does not belong to Arthur Higgins. It belongs to a notary named Brenda Miller. Jenkins turned to the gallery. She looked directly at the second row, where my mother, Lynn, was sitting. Brenda Miller, Jenkins continued, was a paralegal at the real estate firm where Lynn Stewart, the defendant's mother, worked as an office manager 4 years ago. This stamp was reported lost in 2022, the same year this document was allegedly created. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. I turned to look at my mother. Lynn's face was the color of ash. She wasn't being charged. The statute of limitations on the theft of the stamp was messy, and proving she physically gave it to Marissa was difficult. But the implication was clear enough for everyone in that room. My mother hadn't just known. She had provided the tools. She had likely stolen that stamp years ago to help Marissa forge documents, maybe for car loans, maybe for leases. The fake will wasn't just Marissa's work. It was a family project. Marissa looked at Mom. Mom looked at the floor. The bond between them, the toxic, codependent pact they had formed against me, finally shattered under the weight of the truth. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. When they returned, the foreman stood up. He did not look at Marissa. In the matter of the state versus Marissa Klein, on the count of identity theft, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of uttering a forged instrument, guilty. On the count of obtaining property by false pretenses, guilty. On the count of felony larceny, guilty, 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 guilty. The word was like a hammer striking a bell. Marissa let out a low, keen sound, like a wounded animal. She slumped forward onto the defense table. The sentencing hearing was held immediately, as the judge clearly had no patience left for the theatrics of the Stewart family. Ms. Klein, the judge said, peering down from the bench. I have sat on this bench for 20 years. I have seen strangers rob strangers. That is tragic. But to see a sister cannibalize a sister? That is depraved. He adjusted his glasses. You show no remorse. You show no understanding of the damage you have done. You view your sister not as a human being, but as a financial instrument. That makes you dangerous." The sentence was severe: 30 to 40 months in state prison, 5 years of supervised probation upon release, full restitution of $172,000, to be garnished from any future wages, and mandatory cognitive behavioral therapy, focusing on financial crimes and narcissistic personality traits. Then they called my name. The bailiff motioned for me to approach the lectern to read my victim impact statement. My hands were shaking, but my voice was not. I looked at the judge. Then I turned and looked at Marissa. She was crying. But this time, the tears were real. They were the tears of someone who realized the game was over. "Your Honor," I began, "my sister stole $170,000 from me. She stole my credit rating. She stole my passport. She stole the heirlooms from our grandfather's house." I took a breath. "But those are just things. Things can be replaced. Money can be earned. What my sister really stole was my history. She took the memories of my childhood and twisted them until I couldn't trust them anymore. She took the safety of my home and turned it into a crime scene. She made me question my own sanity. She made me wonder if I was the selfish one for wanting to keep what I had earned." I looked at my mother in the gallery. She was staring at me with dead eyes. "For years," I continued, "I was told that family means sacrifice. I was told that protecting my sister was my duty. But I have learned that there is a difference between support and submission. I refuse to be a host for a parasite any longer. I refuse to live as a victim. I am asking for this sentence not out of vengeance, but out of necessity. I need her to go away so I can finally be safe." The judge nodded. "Thank you, Ms. Stewart." When the hearing adjourned, the bailiffs moved in to take Marissa. She didn't scream this time. She didn't look at me. She looked defeated, small, and utterly ordinary. The monster that had terrorized my life was just a woman in handcuffs. I walked out of the courtroom. The hallway was crowded with people leaving, but a circle of silence formed around my mother. Lynn was standing by the water fountain. She looked 20 years older than she had that morning. I walked past her. I didn't plan to stop. "Daphne," her voice was brittle. I stopped and turned. "Are you happy?" she asked. It was the same question she had asked at the arraignment. But the fire was gone. It was just a hollow echo. "She is going to prison. Your sister is going to prison. She committed crimes." "Mom," I said, "she is facing the consequences." "I will never forgive you," Lynn said. She said it quietly, without drama. It was a statement of fact. "You chose the law over your blood. You are dead to me." I looked at the woman who had given birth to me. I looked at the woman who had stolen a notary stamp to help her favorite daughter rob me. I realized that I had been an orphan for a long time. I just hadn't filed the paperwork. "I know," I said, "and I didn't ask for your forgiveness. I didn't ask for your permission to live my life. I am done asking." I turned around. My heels clicked on the marble floor. "Daphne," she called after me, her voice cracking. "Daphne, come back here." I didn't slow down. I didn't look back. I walked through the double doors and into the bright, blinding sunlight of the afternoon. The air tasted sweet. It tasted like freedom. 2 days later, I sat in Mallory Keene's office for the final piece of business. Great Aunt Margot was there, smoking an electronic cigarette and looking triumphant. "The insolvency shield," Margot said, tapping a thick document on the table. "Your grandfather was a genius." Mallory explained the legal mechanics. "Because Marissa has been convicted of a felony involving the intent to defraud the estate and the current owner, the protective clause in your grandfather's original trust has been triggered permanently. It effectively severs Marissa's legal relation to the property. She cannot inherit it. She cannot claim residency. She cannot even file a lien against it. If she steps foot on the land after she gets out of prison, it is an automatic violation of her probation and immediate trespassing." "It is ironclad," Margot said, exhaling a plume of vapor. "The cabin is safe, forever." "Thank you," I said to Margot. "You saved it." You saved yourself, Margot corrected. I just gave you the ammo. 3 months later, the mountains were covered in a blanket of snow. The world was white and silent. I sat on the back deck of the cabin, wrapped in a thick wool blanket, holding a steaming mug of coffee. The kitchen behind me was finished. The white sterile laboratory was gone. In its place was warm, honey-colored alderwood. The island was wrapped in reclaimed barnwood that smelled of history. I had found a vintage rug for the hallway, not the original one, but one that I liked even better. It wasn't the same cabin it had been before. The ghosts were gone. My credit score was recovering. The fraud department had finally cleared the big debts after the conviction. The authorized user mess was untangled once I sent the transcript of my mother's testimony, or rather, her refusal to testify, which the bank took as an admission of guilt. I hadn't spoken to my mother since the trial. I heard from Cousin Josh that she was visiting Marissa in prison every weekend, bringing money she didn't have to put on Marissa's commissary account. They were still playing their game, locked in their cycle of enabling and taking. But I wasn't playing anymore. I took a sip of coffee. The steam rose up and mixed with the mountain mist. I used to think that revenge would feel like fire. I thought it would feel like shouting and screaming and burning it all down. But sitting there, listening to the wind move through the pines, I realized that true revenge wasn't loud. Revenge was quiet. Revenge was a locked door that I controlled. Revenge was a bank account that only I could access. Revenge was the peace of knowing that no matter what happened down in the valley, up here, on this mountain, I was safe. I had lost a sister. I had lost a mother. But as I looked out at the vast, enduring skyline of the Blue Ridge, I knew I had gained the only thing that really mattered. I had my life back. And this time, I was holding the keys. Thank you so much for listening to this story. If you enjoyed this journey of justice and want to hear more revenge stories, please let me know in the comments where you are listening from. I would love to hear your thoughts on Daphne's decision. Don't forget to subscribe to the Jane Revenge Stories channel, like the video, and smash that like button so this story can reach even more people.